My bad. Uh, so, ruminatory animals just eat grass, and so it goes into one of the stomachs, and it tries to integrate, and then it comes back, and they chew it again, and then it goes in the other stomach, and then it gets integrated. And so it's like two stomachs. So it's basically like trying to integrate something from two perspectives. And so they're eating something from the ground and then sort of elevating it. Well, that's not that important, but whatever. They're trying to integrate something, and they're trying to figure it out from two perspectives, from two stomachs. That simple. And the fact that they stand on split hooves is literally like standing on a split realities. You're standing on multiplicity. So you're standing on like two pillars. Same images, it's the same thing. So what it really means is like you have to look at things in comparison. And then you're able to integrate it afterwards. And so the whole thing with kosher meat is to only eat animals that ruminate. And this is where it gets interesting for the pig. Pigs have split hooves, just like ruminatory animals, but they only have one stomach. And they eat just about everything. You can give them garbage or human flesh or something, they'll eat it. So it's kind of like a hypocrite. It's kind of like an impostor. That's what it is. Right? You'd look at the split hooves and you think it's a ruminatory animal, but then you look inside and it's like, oh no, it's not actually. It's like a fake version of it. And I think that's one of the main reasons why pigs are so. How would I put this? They don't. Why Jewish and Islamic traditions don't consume pig or pork. There's more to it too. I think it's kind of like standing on two split realities, but not. I don't know. Regardless. So what it comes down to is having two exact opposites to figure out the one insight. So the one insight is when the food gets integrated in this regard. In this case, I think. So here's where the Bible talks about this. There's two places I want to talk about where it's mentioned. First place, the very first sentence of the Bible. The very first sentence has exactly to do with this. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so that's what Matthew's book begins with, anyways. The original book, not this one. So you have like one high principle, and then you look under and you have two opposing, two opposites. And so that framework right there applies to the entirety of the Bible. That's the key. That's all it is. It's just, in fact, if you try to see it through that framework, you'll notice that a lot of the weird stories are not so weird. It's just that they're trying to figure out how to put two things that are opposites kind of together, so you can sort of get the idea and then get to the insight. It's like, yeah, you this and that. It's like you get what's going on and then try and find the insight over there. So it has to do with this. And what that means is like, so a lot of the implications are kind of difficult to figure out from this perspective. It's like, okay, so when I talked about pro and anti-identity, those are the two opposites. Obviously, if they're going to be opposites, one of them is going to support the higher principle, and the other one is going to reject it. Or not necessarily reject it, but just do something opposing to it or whatever. And so you have that, and then not that. I don't know. 0 and 1 in compare. The best image for this is marriage. I think this is the ultimate reason why a marriage between a man and a woman with children is why is that the highest image you can have in the church? Is because it has to do with this. The stance on the church's stance on marriage is a metaphysical claim. It's not just a how to live your life claim. I mean, it's also that obviously, but it's a metaphysical claim. It's two opposites come together under a higher, more abstract principle that holds them together. Man, woman, two opposites, and above them, marriage. And so, them having children is sort of seen as a. So this is medical exceptions aside. I'm talking about just in terms of like structure and symbolism. It sees something as a successful union of heaven and earth. And so when heaven and earth unite, they unite under a higher principle. That higher principle is necessarily always a simpler version of the two opposites and always a more abstract version of the two opposites. By abstract, I mean something like less material, let's put it this way. Less material, less tangible, less visible. So depending on the scale of reality and then depending on what you're studying, right? But like a molecule is a more abstract version of an atom. Like you can recognize atoms by their structures, but then you put them together in a molecule, and then you more or less declare that as a molecule based on the interactions between the atoms themselves. It's almost like a human thing to interpret that thing as a molecule. If this is making any sense, or whatever. Trying to find examples here, but this applies everywhere. It's usually two opposites, I think, the way I understand it, in the highest form of symbolism. But then when you go lower, it's not necessarily two. It becomes something like pro-unity and then pro-multiplicity or pro-change, pro-difference. And so that could probably like include different things. Haven't tested it out a lot. My issue is I'm not very well read, so including the Bible, but I'm pretty sure there's some stories where it's not that clear cut in the beginning. So you have maybe a bunch of tribes that are heaven and then a bunch of tribes that are earth, and it's not exactly one opposite and then opposite number two or something like that. It's a bit more how would I put it, particular to whatever the story is dealing with. But regardless, one is going to be more towards heaven, and then the other one is going to be more towards earth, and then you're able to compare the two and then get a high perspective. Okay, so let's get the insight. Every time we get insights in symbolism, we're just using that structure. The whole thing is us practicing using this structure. I think it's even more helpful to think about it in terms of like a skill. It's almost like you're practicing how to play an instrument, or like exercising a muscle. This is a muscle we haven't used in like 500 years or whatever, how long it's been. And so it's something we have to sort of practice to get good at. And every time we get better at symbolism, it's us just getting better at using the structure. Every time we get insights, it's us getting insights into this structure. Because if this structure is the structure of everything, then everything includes everything. So it's not the structure that's complicated, it's the everything around us that's complicated, if this is making any sense. The complexity is the world itself. Because I was going to go with this, but yeah, either way. One thing you can use to sort of figure out that you've acquired some symbolic insight, especially when it comes to high symbolism. So I'm going to repeat a lot of the things, but it's kind of important because it's dealing with the same thing over and over again. But whatever, it's like one of the clues you have that you're dealing with something that's high symbolism, that you've acquired some proper insight, is that it's first of all very simple, and then second of all, you can explain it to a very, let's say, you can explain it to the medieval peasant with no education, and you can also explain it to the theologian, and both can make sense of it. And so if it's really high symbolism, you're not going to need 50 diagrams and then some over complex system of how things connect to each other or whatever. In fact, if that's what you're dealing with, it's a really, really good sign that you're lost in that moment, and then you still need more time to figure out what the high symbolism is. In fact, I think it's kind of a natural part of the process. It's not that avoidable. But if it really takes a lot of complex explanations to showcase what the insight is about, then you're definitely not dealing with high symbolism anymore. You're lost somewhere. And then when it clicks, it's something you can understand. Maybe you can explain in one or two sentences. I don't know. Doesn't mean that the peasant or theologian is going to accept what you're saying, but it's going to be graspable. Um, of course, some insights are going to require other insights in order for them to be either relevant or understandable. Like, in a sense that if you don't understand the dichotomy of heaven and earth, there's no point in talking about the cherubim. I don't know, dumb, quick example, but some things are just more important than other things. There's a hierarchy to this as well. But still, it's like a good way of figuring it out. So why is it simple? We can ask that question. Like, why does it have to be like this simple thing that I can explain to everybody? Well, because insight is moving towards unity. So you have these two opposites. So literally multiplicity below, and that multiplicity below is supposed to support a unity above. And the more you move towards unity, obviously, the more you move towards things that are simple. Why? Because they're not multiplicitous and complex. Like, these are one of the that's where it gets interesting. Like, a lot of the obvious stuff are now super important. Kind of makes me feel like a child sometimes, because in the best way possible, because like I have to re-examine all the obvious things in the world, the things we take for granted, and then rediscover their importance. That's one of the best parts about symbolism. So obviously, if we're moving towards unity, then the thing is going to be simple. Maybe if it's high symbolism automatically means union of heaven and earth. So it means it's going to be both concrete and both abstract at the same time. Although the peasant might only understand most of the concrete stuff, and I guess the theologian might have more value in the abstract stuff, but still, it's going to be both united. It's not going to be just abstract or just concrete. So the first place he talks about this is the first sentence of the Bible, and then I think one place where it's explained a bit more explicitly is the Transfiguration of Christ. I think this is what it's talking about. It's not so much I think, it's kind of, I see it any other way, to be honest, myself personally. So it's like, I'm gonna butcher the story, but I'm sorry. But so Christ walks up the mountain and he takes 3 apostles with him. I think it was Saint Peter, James, and then I don't remember the third apostle. And so, same page 50. I mean, okay, page 50 in Language of Creation. That's where you can find the image I'm streaming right now. If that's what it's talking about, or page, yeah, okay. So they walk up this mountain, and Christ's garment starts to glow. It's one of those things that kind of looks very complicated in the beginning, but it's one of those patterns that repeats all the time in Christ's stories. And if you connect it to that pattern, then it becomes much easier to grasp. It's his garments are the exterior aspect of them. That's why Jonathan keeps talking about garments of skin. Apologies. Oh, come again? Sorry. Oh, my bad. Somebody said something about church, but I didn't hear it. Okay, never mind. But my bad. So his garments glow, and so it's literally the outside, the exterior, something that's not you. It's like a layer. That's why Jonathan keeps talking about garments of skin as layer of death. The emphasis is on death, and so clothes are just a form of death in a sense. Regardless of how we use them at the moment, that's not that important. I'm just saying it's just this death, and so Christ is making death glow. The garments he's wearing. So it's like death, or it's like the finding light in darkness and then having that serve you. So remember when one of the most important tweets I think from Matthieu is when he says that Christ turns death into renewal, and then the Antichrist turns renewal into death, and that's the difference. So That's a moment of trying to turn death into renewal. It's okay. It's shedding light on the exterior, on death. And then Moses and Elijah show up. Moses is just the prophet of the law, and then Elijah is just the prophet of the dreams. It's the two prophets of the two aspects of reality. It's simple as. Of course, there's a lot more depth to the story, but the simple structure is that. And so Moses is, I think in this case, he's basically heaven. He's the one that he's stuck in exile in the desert, stuck in the exile of earth, I suppose, something like that. But then climbs up the mountain and then receives the law, and that law becomes the identity of the Jewish people. And so he's the bringer of the identity, the heaven. In fact, even in Exodus, it says a bunch of times that Moses is like God to the people. So he's the high principle that the people unite under. So that's the heaven part. And then Elijah is the more divination related part. That's the earth part. Very simple, at least in comparison to Moses. It's easier to understand what Elijah is. And so it becomes Christ as high principle, and then the two opposites below him. And then what happens is there's a fog or mist or something like that, but whatever. It's like a cloud of complexity shows up all of a sudden, and it obscures the whole thing. And so it's almost like you get a glimpse of this pattern. You see some sort of pattern. You don't know what to make of it. In fact, I think Peter, at that point, St. Peter asks to put Elijah and Moses in a tent. Like, should we make a tent for them to rest? Tent is a symbol of renewal, by the way. It took forever to figure out, but it's you're in the forest, you're walking somewhere, and when you rest, what do? You set up a tent. So tent is when you rest. I kept thinking something like mobile home or home you can transport. No, it's really just it's a bed. It's like a place to rest, renew yourself. Okay, so maybe that's even besides the story, besides the point. But he's like, should I put him in a tent? And then it says even so in the story that Peter didn't know what he was asking. So it's a moment of like you get a glimpse of some sort of pattern. You don't know what to do with it, but then you keep thinking about it, and then suddenly you get lost in the complexity. And that's when the fog shows up. And this is when all of us start kind of like making crazy like connections between biblical references and whatnot, and it's not that bad, but whatever. It's how it happens. And then the diagrams, and then whatever. And you need 50 essays maybe to explain something. Happens to the best of us. And then the whole thing clears up, and then suddenly you see only Christ. And then it says that he was transfigured. Or what did it say even specifically that his face was transfigured? I'm not sure. Either way, he's renewed into a higher principle. And so that's like an explicit like elucidation of how the first sentence of the Bible works in terms of understanding reality. That's in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth and how they interact. And so it's using that to understand how to gain insights. And that's why that's why he even reveals it to the apostles in secret. It's kind of like that if my memory is correct. So it's kind of like the ultimate revelation before, of course, the resurrection and crucifixion and all of that. But beforehand, I think it's the high point of the revelation. It's like what Christ is using all the time to figure out what to do with the problems he's dealing with, or how to save people when he's saving them. So all of this is a very complicated, or maybe not so complicated, but it's one of the ways to talk about this exact pattern that I'm showing here in the image. It's only this. And so there's a reason why we struggle with this. It's because, in a sense, I think the material perspective is probably the opposite of this. Maybe this upside down, or maybe there's more caveats to it. I'm not sure. But that probably also requires a lot of practice to be good at the material perspective. It's just that that's the only perspective we have today in today's world. And so everybody's naturally experts at it because that's what everybody grew up with. I'd even say that maybe somewhere around early Christianity, it was actually probably the opposite. I have a feeling that the overemphasis on the material perspective, so I think materialism almost came as a reaction to the overemphasis on the spiritual worldview. It's a theory of mine, I'm not exactly sure it's correct, but so it's like one eye was closed and then the other eye is opened. And then we switched the eyes. That's sort of what happened, I think. Closed one eye, opened the other. So if you read, that's why kind of Jonathan keeps struggling with this question. People ask him like, well, why didn't people talk about symbolism before? Technically they did, but also technically that was everybody's worldview. And so what I'm describing here with the pattern, it looks very kind of abstract and kind of systematic for us. In fact, the way I talk about it, I kind of keep talking about it in terms of systematic studying. But it's not, because it's literally the study of how things come together. And so how two opposites unite is the study of how things come together. And what we do today is we study how things fall apart or how things are different from each other. That's the opposite perspective. That one can be just as systematic. In fact, I think that's what science is for. Not bad. It's just half of reality, and we need the other half. And so we need to practice this muscle more, basically, or everybody does in a sense. How things come together. And so I think a lot of people that end up going into spirituality or all kinds of like not necessarily just Christianity, like even homeopathic, I guess, medicine or stuff like that are into the whole interested in the whole spiritual worldview are actually trying to exercise this way of thinking of how things come together and how things are connected. I do think ultimately people still end up getting confused because of materialism, but regardless, that's the attempt. And so here's another way of talking about the same exact thing. Let's say you're studying something, some pattern, and you're trying to understand the symbolism of something. Let's say, I don't know. It's gonna be very difficult to come up with the example, but the symbolism of climbing up a mountain, and you have some elaborate description of it or whatever, and then you come to the conclusion. And if the conclusion is something like how would I put it? Like a complex essay or something, or if the conclusion is something like, well, you have this system of these elements, and see what we're missing is this puzzle piece, and so the symbolism of the mountain is the missing piece of this puzzle piece. And if we just add the puzzle piece, now we have a complete system. Look, if we end up talking about something in terms of that, then we're not talking about insights anymore. That's not the symbolism of a mountain. Um, that's not wrong, but it's more of a material worldview than it is the spiritual worldview, which is useful, by the way. I'm not against that, but that's not what symbolism specifically is. No, symbolism is not when you end up with a system of something. It's when the systems come together and you end up with the simple principle that explains the systems. It has to be the opposite of this. And so it's not gonna end up looking like a missing puzzle piece. No, it's gonna end up like the explanation of why the puzzle even exists, or what the puzzle is, or why the puzzle. I don't know. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's a good indication for us so we can know when we're lost and when we're not. So it's a good indication to figure out whether we need more time or not. Saying all this because also 2 seconds. Because a lot of things in Matthieu's book are very, very difficult unless we think about them through the symbolic lens I was just describing. And so a lot of the puzzles, in fact, I think it's somewhat made on purpose on his side, just to get people to practice how to use this. They look overly complex, they're made in a way where you can absolutely lose yourself in the details and not figure out how to think about things because of the details, and then not understand what the whole post is about. But then you keep thinking about how to think about things simply, and then you notice that a lot of the details are actually more of a distraction, and you just have to ignore them. In fact, it's even better, at least in the beginning. And then you're just able to see the super simple pattern, and then you kind of know when you get it, when you look at it and like, that's what he's talking about. It's like, what a way of showing it. All right, I get it. And then the details and the stuff is something you can add to the implications. So when you look down the hierarchy, that's where their place is. Of course, they're not to be ignored. Ignoring details is a problem. But so, okay, one more bit, but then I have to stop because I don't want to beat a dead horse or something. But Matthieu mentions this a bunch of times in the book, I think, or this book specifically. Is that people have a problem with losing themselves in the details. And so, for instance, you can think about rumination and ruminatory animals, and you know you're losing yourself in the details if you're trying to understand symbolism from the perspective of the properties of what you're studying. Is you're not the properties have to do with the implications, but not the insight, not the how things unite. In fact, if you think about the properties of something, you're studying the material perspective, not the symbolic perspective, or sorry, the spiritual perspective. So, if you're thinking about the symbolism of a camel, and you're thinking about the color of the camel, or how the teeth are arranged, or something, stupid examples or whatever, or what its tail looks like, you'll most likely lose yourself in the symbolism, and you won't be able to figure it out. And so, what you have to do instead is you have to find the other opposite, or some kind of opposite. So to understand the camel, compare it to something that isn't a camel until you find something really good. So I don't know, what's the symbolism of a camel? Well, instead of thinking about the details of what a camel is, I can think about it in terms of like, well, okay, what's the difference between a camel and a wolf? I don't know. So wolf lives in a forest. When I think about camels, I think about deserts. Wolves hunt. Camels are hunted. So, I can domesticate camels. I can't domesticate wolves. And so in comparison, you can already start seeing a line. So it's something like domesticated has to do with a desert. Wolves hunt people. People use camels. In fact, merchants use camels. Right? So a shepherd has sheep, but do shepherds have camels? Not really. I guess maybe for milk, but that's a very when I think about it, mostly it's usually merchants. So okay, it has to do with like transfer of resources maybe across the desert. And so yada yada yada. And then see, it's much easier to start getting insights about what a camel is. And so when Christ says something like it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to inherit the kingdom of heaven, or if I'm not butchering that quote. To figure out what the camel is in that case, you just have to think about it in terms of comparisons. Why? Because if you're studying how things unite, when you compare things, when you find the two opposites, it's not two opposing details, it's two opposing identities in order to find a higher identity. They only become details once you've figured out what the identity is, if this is not a bit too abstract. But up until that point, they're two opposing identities. And so to figure out what a table is, I have to compare it to like a chair. Right. And so how can a chair and a table unite? Well, I don't know, my computer desk. And so this desk, I put my PC on it or whatever, and then I have my chair, and then both of them together, my computer setup. Dumb example, I don't know, but that's how things unite. And then from that, I can understand the chair is where I sit, and then the table is where other foreign objects sit. And so that's how you get insight. Quick example. Matthieu talks about, for instance, like the symbolism of a cherub. I think it's probably here somewhere that he mentions that the cherub is or in one of the YouTube videos maybe, that a cherub is like a mirror. And so you can try and think about it in terms of what a cherub is. Like you can go to like, you can read what Ezekiel wrote about cherubs, think about eagles and humans and bulls, and then figure out like, oh, what do they have to do with a mirror? I guess the bull has something to do with earth, and then because it's flesh, it's the thing being eaten. The lion is what eats, the bull is what is eaten. And then think about it that way, and then maybe the earth thing has to do with the mirror. I don't know. Actually, super simple. So Adam and Eve are kicked out of paradise, and then God puts a cherub and a flaming sword. So the Bible is telling you what to compare the objects with, usually, especially if it's a very important part of the story. They'll put the two opposites usually together in the same sentence or same moment in the story. They do this on purpose a lot of times, constantly. In fact, it's very difficult to tell the story unless they do that. That, and I think it's just a natural consequence of writing stories that are fractal, but that's a different topic. Okay, so why is why is the cherub a mirror? Well, the sword is flaming. Flames produce light, and so you have this one thing that produces light. What's the opposite of producing light? I guess reflecting light. There you go. Cherub is a mirror, and it's not that crazy. It's not like right. You you don't need a diagram for this. It's stupid simple. But then you think about the implications of how this, like finding examples in the real world of how this works. Then it gets complicated. But it's not so complicated that you're lost anymore, because now you can compare the things. And so there's if you have this in mind, and when you read the book here, the one I compiled, you'll see Matthieu struggling to explain this over and over and over again from like 100 different like perspectives. Um, and he keeps saying like you need time for this, and obviously one of the reasons you need time is because you need time with like, if you're practicing an instrument, you don't become an expert in the instrument in like 2 weeks. Like somebody can explain like how to play chords on a guitar, but doesn't mean I get to play them well. I have to keep practicing playing chords until I'm good at it. Same thing with this. And we're a generation of people that are so distant from this type of thinking. It's so foreign to us that it's going to take a lot longer than we expect. It's not such a bad thing. It's, these type of problems are also opportunities. You're in a position. We're in a position now where we don't have a lot of it's a weird thing to say, but we don't have a lot of competition in terms of like figuring these things out. So how would I say it? If everything's problematic, then if everything around you kind of sucks, then the very little things you do to fix things automatically just make you a hero. Doesn't take that much to uh, how would I say it? Doesn't take that much to bring a lot of relief to people. Even the simplest little things kind of help a lot. So, if this is making any sense, I don't know, but that's the key. That's the whole thing. I'm sorry if I'm being very repetitive with this. I don't want to put people to sleep. But one of the ways you make something important is by repeating it and then dancing around it. It's one of the things I learned in coming from Eastern Europe, from the Balkans especially, is that a lot of people, like, it's one thing I love about the West. I can talk to people from the West, and almost all of the conversations have some sort of substance. Could be stupid, I can be talking to you like I can be in a bar or something, talk to a drunk guy, but even those conversations have something interesting in them. I don't know. But when I have conversations in the Balkans, my personal experience is like the opposite of that. It's I would talk to people, and then a lot of the conversations are about things everybody knows about already, or things being repeated over and over again, jokes about jokes, judging other people. Very little substance in them. Uh, kind of useless conversations about what the person did in that day. And so it's weird, but what I've actually noticed is that what people are doing is that maybe they're having these BS conversations, they're not leading anywhere, But everybody's so used to BS conversations that they keep meeting with each other and they don't mind having the BS conversations. They're just used to it. I do personally, but other people don't. And so they keep repeating the cycle of them meeting the same people over and over again. And what ends up happening naturally is those people become very, very important to them in their lives. Now, I don't know, man, like 20, 30 years ago, this was so obvious, but my generation at least, this is something we have to relearn, which is so weird because it's such a basic human function. But especially after COVID, it's like one of those very basic things that are just simply forgotten or taken for granted or misunderstood. And so one of the issues I see here in the West, now I live in Germany, is like um, people don't come together unless there's some sort of event or something to do, some activity, so they can bond over the activity. But in the East, people meet just for the sake of meeting the person. He's doing it for the person. And if the conversations are BS or boring, it's like something you're both struggling with. In a sense, like it's boring, but it's boring for us together, and we'll survive through this boredom together, kind of thing. Okay, so same thing with rumination. Keep repeating the same cycle of this pattern I just described. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and I just play the same dance over and over again, like running around in circles. And what it does, it makes it more and more important, and then you start seeing it everywhere. And you learning about symbolism is you doing the same thing. You take something simple, boring, and you keep playing it back and forth in your head, keep repeating it, and then you increase its importance. Obviously, right? If you pick any random object around you right now, keep looking at it, some random object. The more you look at it, the more important it becomes. And if you keep looking at it, at one point it's going to hijack your attention. You're going to, I don't know, think about its details or something. It's a stupid thing, whatever. But that's how things work. And so you repeat the same thing over and over again. And then, let's say, what is the symbolism of Christ walking on a mountain? Kind of sounds like nothing. But then you keep looking at the story. It's like Christ walks up to the mountain, and Christ climbs a mountain, and then his disciples follow him up. And it's one of those things that it's so stupid or simple, it's easy to throw away. But you keep thinking about it, sometimes you're lost in the complexity, sometimes you're not. You don't know what even to make of it, but you keep thinking about it. Sooner or later, you start getting insights. And sooner or later, because you kept thinking about it so much, it becomes important. Now that it's important, you're just living your life, whatever, doing whatever, meeting people, working, something. And your daily experience starts to give you examples about what the symbolism of the thing you're studying is. And so Matthieu mentioned this somewhere in the book I compiled, is that you don't understand symbolism so much through thinking about it. It's actually more by learning with your body. You do other things instead, and then those examples feed the symbolism of something you're trying to understand. And then you feed it, and then it grows like a plant. I think that's how it works. It's like the parable of the sower. Like, why is heaven seed? And so you plant a seed in the ground somewhere. Seed literally dies first, grows roots, can't even see it because it's underground, but you keep watering it. After a week or so, depending on the plant, I guess, but after a week or so, you see a sprout. And then you're like, oh, this was worth it. There's actually something happened. Up until that point, you don't even know what to think about it because you can't see it because it's underground. It's like, did I kill the seed? Was the seed dead or poisoned or something? Or did they drown it in water? Or is the soil even good? Whatever. But you keep trusting the process. I don't know what to say. And then it sprouts, and then you see it, and I was like, oh, there's a pattern there. And then you keep taking care of it, and then it grows into an actual pattern you can take fruits from, or at least whatever it is, depending on the plant, I guess. But that's how it works with everything else. And so, for instance, Christ walking up the mountain and then his disciples following him up, that's the symbolism of hierarchies, no? This high principle goes higher and higher, and then those disciples move higher and higher, and as a result, unite more and more. And when he gets to the complete top of the mountain, everybody's around him united. And then Christ descends the mountain, and then the people disperse. And so, symbolism of hierarchy, that's like a lot of things work like that, basically. Stupid example, I don't know. But that's how I see it. That's why I see the key, and then I can try later to try and interpret some of the patterns I see here to showcase how it works. But I want to stop talking for now and then see what people think about this, because I blabber about too much. Oh, thank you, Candice. Okay, so what do you guys think? Open discussion, whatever. What does it make you feel like?
I really enjoyed that. I just kind of slipped in a few minutes ago, but what I heard reminded me a lot. So as you were talking about focusing your attention, and then you said how Matthieu says you can't really try to do symbolism. It comes to you as you're doing other things. It really reminds me of this conversation I had with Gage recently about reproducing identity versus renewing identity, and how those are like a full moon and a new moon kind of role. So the full moon is your constantly representing something to your attention. Like you said, going to meet someone over and over and over again. You're just continually reproducing that event, reproducing that image to your mind, reproducing the same actions, or remembering something about reality. And what you're doing is you're actually presenting it to your subconscious, and your asleep processes will renew it for you and represent it back to you in a way that you can get a new insight from. Because as people have said, you can't really take credit for an insight. It comes to you, and you feel like you didn't work. It came to you like a gift, and that seems to match with kind of that new moon symbolism. So that's just where that took me. My 2 cents.
Sounds great, thank you. Kind of reminds me of like going to the gym or something, right? It's like you break muscles and then you sleep on it, and then sleep as in like the muscles recover and then they end up becoming stronger. And so that increases the importance of that structure, or the strength of that structure, or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? What the rest do you think? You can also type in the question. I can read it out.
Have you guys been talking through specific tweets and seeing what we think about them?
Nope, not yet.
That might be fun. If you want to pick one, I need to open this stream. But if you just want to pick one that's interesting to you, maybe we read through it and see.
Yeah, I want to do it with the very first post you made. I'll try, and then try and apply that pattern there, and then see what we come up with. That's sort of the fun part, because even if you don't get the full insight now, just starting it, the conversation is always interesting. I can talk a little bit just before I start about the danger of high symbolism, why it's dangerous. And that's because you always find insights into depth. So you have to go into depth, into strangeness, wilderness, something outside. So think as broadly as you can about these concepts. They're the same word in this case. So you have to go outside to find something new. And so our encounter with high symbolism that we don't understand is just something that we don't understand. And if it's very high, or not even that high, it's just if it's something that can have an impact about how we think,
then we interpret it as something that is from the outside, that's having an impact on how we think. And so people either react to it as an invasion, something you have to defend ourselves from, or they react to it as something that's genius, as something we have to celebrate. Or like an example is like our pop culture. How would I say it? Like aliens, for instance. How we understand aliens in movies, comic books, whatever it is. It's always it's always like there are two images of aliens. It's like they're either here to conquer us, destroy us, or they're like the predator or something, some monster, or there are these absolute geniuses, and they're the reason why humanity even evolved technologically. And if it wasn't for the aliens, we wouldn't be able to get to where we are today. So the whole thing with the pyramids being built by aliens and stuff. I mean, in some sense, it's very true that the pyramids were built by aliens, because those ancient Egyptians, for us are more or less aliens, because we don't understand their perspective from worldview. They lived in a completely different world from us. But in terms of like pop culture aliens, that's how we react to higher symbolism. And so a lot of us, or people in general, have this tendency to kind of look at Matthieu and then see him as this absolute genius and whatnot, or some crazy person. But that's mostly because the whole thing hasn't clicked for us yet. I mean, I'm not denying how amazing all of this is, but that's the same pattern that we fall into. All right, I just thought that'd be useful. So I could try with this. I could try interpreting the key structure I talked about to figure out what this is. So he says, like, what happens to a civilization when its leaders eat from the tree of knowledge and good and bad? And he says this, and it's this image. There's some context here that's important. That's somewhere down in the comments. I'll read this as well, but there are some things that are in other comments. I think they should be here in the book. Debacy, I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm gonna butcher it. And Goldust are WWE fighters, so wrestlers, obviously. And then this Globetrotters and Generals. I'm not American, so I didn't understand this reference, but these are like, I think, basketball teams that played against each other, but the games were always what's the word for it? They were corrupt. Somebody paid for the results. So they were predetermined beforehand. So there were always like fake matches pretending to be real. Okay, so he says something like, on the stage, WWF are the same thing, right? Wrestling match between Ted and Goldust determine who will host the next basketball game between the Globetrotters and Washington Generals. So he says, behind the scenes, a chess game between AI whatever and then AI whatever to determine which AI will choose the performers in the following wrestling match. The strategy was to convince everyone that the government needed to include everything. Once that became the consensus, they gently and gradually applied the standard to everything, not just the government. The government needs to include everything, everything needs to include everything. So, applying this recursively leads to a dissolution of all corporations, groups, and substructures, leaving only a centralized totalitarian government full control of a homogenized fluid mass. So, reading the rainbow cult stuff helps with the whole inclusion thing to figure out what it is. But keep in mind, like, when this becomes very simple to understand and obvious, that's when you know you've came to something simple. It came to something high. And so this image is one of those good examples of things that can just throw you out with the sheer amount of details in it, and you don't even know what to focus on. But then the more you get insights about how reality works, the more you read what he was going after, the more simple it becomes to understand what the whole thing is about. So it's like
I have a
AI
question.
213. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
So I understand the concept of kayfabe, of sort of rigging the game but making it look like it's still a competition. But
Okay.
how does kayfabe relate to including everything?
I think both of those come as a result from the same problem. That's how
Okay.
they relate. They relate in origin, I think. So has to do with what do you do when you have a lack of principle. It's that's the whole problem. You had some sort of principle that united everybody and everything. Let's say Christ, and then you lose that principle. And once you've lost the principle, when people forgot about it or can't understand it anymore or don't like it, despise it, whatever, for some reason that principle doesn't apply anymore, and you don't have a replacement principle, then what you have is like an open question. And so from that problem of an open question, one of the ways you can survive is by including things together so you don't end up in constant wars. And so the inclusion of everything has to do with keeping the peace, because if things can't unite somehow, anyhow, they'll just end up in wars because now you have a missing principle. So it's going to be one principle versus another. And then kayfabe is like, the way I see it, I think it's not just politics. I think kayfabe applies to on the personal scale too. It's like people's personal behavior. It's like that's a weird sentence, but when people become very performative, they're not authentic anymore. When they talk, the way they talk, it becomes kind of like a cheap theater. It's like everybody's like, that quote from like Shakespeare, like all the world's a stage and you're merely actors in it. I butchered it, but whatever. That's not good. That's like a that means that everybody's being fake all of a sudden. It's that they're not touching reality, and you become like that naturally because you don't know what principle you're standing on. And so us being fake is like us trying to it's like us holding on to the remnants of what used to be a principle and then trying to preserve those remnants, but we don't know why they're there or why they existed in the first place. And so it becomes this performative thing, right? You're not doing it for the sake of the principle because you don't have it anymore. And so why do you do it? Well, you do it because that's the norm, and so it becomes performative. And so that applies to politics and everything else as well, I think. That's how I see it. I was kind of holding off on this part because it has to do with the story of Noah. I'm not sure how interested people are because I talk so much and then I don't want to drown people in information, but the story of Noah has to do with like what do you do when you have it's the discovery of inclusion. Or no, I'll correct myself. It's more like the discovery of hope. And hope has to do with like you including all these foreign principles into your system, even though you don't have like a higher principle to unite them, in the hopes that one day those questions, those problems will be answered. And so what you can do is you can hijack that. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get to
Go
the
ahead, yeah.
button fast enough. I was going to ask, is the idea sort of underneath the idea of kayfabe being related to holding on to everything, the idea that if there was a fair fight, then someone would die, and like so the losing wrestler is no longer included, let's say. So the idea is if you don't know how to deal with death, then you try to put it into a false death in order to keep it in stasis and hold on to everything. Is that like the reason this sort of control is trying to prevent death because it doesn't have access to renewal?
I like this. This is a good catch. Yeah. No, I never thought about it this way. Yeah, but so far sounds good. Yeah, makes sense.
I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
still.
there was this.
I would.
I'm
I,
tweaking it.
Story seems to be like using the tree of knowledge and good and bad to defend yourself. It's like using that to try and destroy your enemies. But if you use it too long, it becomes too powerful, so it occupies too much stuff. It occupies it. It becomes an overbearing structure.
well, I bring it up because going back
Yeah.
to the kayfabe thing, and the authentic versus inauthentic, and as you point out, artificial versus not artificial. You know, man is made from clay. The golem is made from clay. Man is given the breath and the word. The golem is given the breath and the word and the word. So there's that parallel to the attempt with AI there. But I'll let you
Yes,
continue.
it's missing a seed though. That's the thing with the golem. It's one of those things that's not mentioned, but that's sort of the implication. If you, one of the things I thought about is at one point Matthieu mentioned something like how bread is made with all four elements. Don't remember what the earth part would be, but you have something like if you use leaven, that would be the earth part, I guess, the time part, sort of loosely, water, I guess, loosely, if I'm connecting these terms together. Then there's fire, as in furnace, air, if you're puffing up the bread up with air, which is usually what happens when you bake it. Water, because then you crush seeds and then you mix it with actual water. I'm not sure so much about what the earth part is. That's when I'm confused. But then one of
Well,
the
you
main
have to have
point.
you have to have grains. That's the earth part is the grain.
Okay, so I'd say grain is like the heaven part, no? Because it's seeds. That's why I was confused. Maybe once you crush them, actually, you have a point. I guess when you crush the seeds, that's the earth part.
But and for me, the heaven or the ether part would be like we don't know why leavening does this, but bibbity bobbity boop.
Well, it's simple. It has to do. They didn't use leaven like a specific.
Right. Well, we know it as leavening, but like the time required to let it do its thing
Yeah.
is
Okay.
that fifth part.
Yes. Well, fair enough. But I was gonna. Oh, maybe you have a good point here. I kind of saw it from a different perspective, but it might be that yours makes a lot more sense too. Well, it's connected, anyways. It's definitely connected because
Yeah.
I was gonna say to make bread you need seeds, and then the golem doesn't have a seed, right? If you compare it to Adam, Adam's made in the similar way, right? Made from the earth or dust or whatever, and then breath of God, so highest and lowest. But Adam has a seed to produce other atoms. Golem doesn't. And so one of the aspects of the tree of knowledge of good and bad is that it lacks a seed. Especially if you have the comparison I talked about in the beginning, where it's like tree of life is like tree of good, so it has the seed in it, right? And then it says something like trees that are good for eating, or with fruits that are good for eating, and then trees that are beautiful to look at. And so if we look at the tree of knowledge of good and bad as this ornamental tree, Golem's kind of in the same way. It lacks a seed. It's kind of like the power of the unknown, the foreign, the seedless. Because golems can't speak. It's one of them. They can't vocalize their thoughts or anything. So that's very important. I think that's connected to that for sure. Can't explain it fully, but intuitively it just makes sense to me. But if they keep using it, then it ends up destroying everything. So it's like it's lacking this patience thing too, because
As you were
I'm not remembering what cartoon, whether it's DC or Marvel or just some random thing I've seen, but I'm also remembering there being a golem that could make other golems in certain environments. Like if the clay thing you're fighting the, I think it was Spider-Man, maybe not. That was this guy made of sand. Anyway, not Spider. The idea is that if you're battling the golem in his world in the clay, then he can make other golems, and you better not fight him in his turf.
right. Okay. Has to do probably with one of the best ways you can deal with the tree of knowledge of good and bad is to step outside of the arena that it's playing in, and then
Yeah.
look at the game from the outside. Otherwise, if you get captured by it, it's very difficult.
Well, and
By the way, seed.
yeah, that thing that I brought up with multiple golems is just one single instance that's different from like the normal like understanding of a golem, and like in my understanding too, like it's normally like a tick tock, and it's gonna like crumble no matter what you do eventually, sort of thing. Like it has a very limited lifespan.
That makes a lot of sense. It has to decrease in quality. Yes, that's one of the symptoms.
Right. Something
Decrease
like
in quality,
a
increase in
24-hour
speed.
period sort of thing. Like it can only exist for that time.
Yeah. So I was gonna say something else. The seed part over here wouldn't be the heaven part, even though we talk about seed as heaven, but that's in relationship to us. The seed part would take up the God part in this scenario because it's the higher principle. So think about it as the seed of the father that produces children or something like that. Seed of the tradition. And so if it's lacking seed, it's actually lacking the principle part, the God part. That's what it's lacking. And that's why I connected it to tree of knowledge of good and bad. It's like the lack of principle. Let me just pop it. Okay, perfect. So lack of seed is the same concept as what's here in the first image with the two AIs. This is why I said like it. I think the numbers here are just purposefully jumbled numbers. They don't mean anything, and I think that's the point. I think the symbolism of this is you're thinking about what the numbers mean and you can't figure it out, and that's the symbolism. Is that a bunch of random things you can't figure out, and so
That's
that's what it is.
usually I would have to say that I haven't noticed that and I haven't tried to figure it out. Matthew doesn't generally just make stuff up for no reason.
But it fits here because it's almost like made up for no reason because that's what strange intelligences are. It's like they have some sort of information and you try to use that information to figure out what the principle is, and then you can't. It's like leading nowhere. And so it's like a lack of a principle. And that's why I think it's like jumbled numbers. Unless there's something specific with gematria, but I don't think so. I think the symbolism here is the fact that it's jumbled, like looks like it's supposed to mean something, but you can't figure it out. And that's what AIs are in general. At least it helps me to understand it that way. I don't know. Might be wrong, but that at least fits the pattern. So you have like a lack of a principle above, and so it moves into this competition. It's like two intelligences fighting each other. So it's two unknown principles fighting each other. So it's complete opposites of each other, but united by something unknown. And then the Kayfabe part, and then the last bit is I think has to do with the control opposition. I think both middle and last part probably have to do with the same thing, but controlled opposition. I think it becomes important because it's like Matthew mentioned this a bunch of times somewhere. I think late in the book here, but it's like a mockery of it's like a mockery of renewal. 666 is like mockery of 7. It's like trying really hard to get to 7, just can't do it. That time, think about it that way. So the issue is what do you do with death? Death is supposed to renew, but the problem is you have to die in order for it to renew. But you can do that in a wrong way where you just die and then there's no renewal. You just died for nothing. And so don't know how to figure that out. And so that's where resurrection comes in. That's where it's important. But without that, you don't have that. And so it's like you end up, I guess that's what vampires do. You end up exploiting the death of others so that you can renew yourself. But that's like an artificial renewal. It's like you're already a corpse and you're artificially keeping yourself alive by killing others around you. And so that's why, for instance, a good symbolism of this is, or example, is like a CEO that overworks his workers, little vacation, almost no breaks, overtime. And so these are all the aspects of rest that the worker is supposed to have. And those aspects of rest are taken away. So the aspects of renewal sacrificed so that they can put in more hours so they can artificially, maybe that word artificial here is troublesome, but whatever, so they can keep the company alive and then make it exist longer and then make it larger. And then the irony of this is that all of this, especially in today's world, all of this ultimately culminates to capital. So it's all these companies are doing it for the increase of capital. Think about it. They're doing it for the increase of power and money. such a cliche thing, but it explains everything. So it's all about the increase of money and power. That's the increase of heaven and earth. Power would be the heaven part, the invisible part that you can use to influence things around you, right? If you have good relationships with people in high positions, that's a power thing. So you have, right? You can't grab that relationship. You can't see it. It's not like it's an invisible thing, but it's definitely real because you can use this invisible thing to influence the world around you. And then money is the more tangible aspect, which is the actual potential you have to do things. And so more body. It's pure potentiality almost. And so money and power are like pure heaven and pure earth in some materialistic sense, maybe. So um, so all these companies are vying for more money and power. For what? And it kind of sounds like a stupid question, but it's like, no, it's like the ultimate, like, why are they doing it? And so, okay, they have this amount, you can't quantify it, but whatever. You have this amount of power, and you have this amount of money. And so what are you going to do with it? Why do you need this amount of money for, specifically? And the answer is like, it's always an afterthought. It's not even there's no specific purpose. It's not like you're, let's say, random example, but it's not like you're building a cathedral, happens to cost like $100 million. So you're collecting $100 million to build a cathedral. Specific purpose with a specific goal. That's, and so you increase your relationships with other people, your power, I don't know, and your influence, so you can increase your amount of capital so you can get this cathedral built without it getting stopped or destroyed or whatever. Specific purpose with a specific plan. But these companies are just doing it for no purpose, no plan. And so they're united under a foreign principle. That's one example of it. Because there's no answer to the question why. And so they end up building these other companies like, I don't know, like Blue Origin with Jeff Bezos sending rockets into space because, I don't know, he's going to be like Elon Musk now or something. I mean, I don't want to undermine these figures too because there's something very powerful and, how would I say this? Actually interesting about how they became the people who they are now, like with that amount of power and money or whatever. But as in, I'm trying to say I don't want to dismiss everybody or just be too casual about this. But regardless, it's like he builds this company and it's more like an afterthought to have something to do with this amount of power and money. Because funny part is all these figures that are so powerful, they're facing the same exact meaning crisis as everybody else around them. They're no different in this case, right? That you wake up in the morning and the question is, why do I exist? And so you collect heaven and earth, but you never ever connect it to some purpose. And so that's suicide. That's what that is. It's like potential for potential's sake. That's suicide. You increase potential for the sake of the increase of potential. That's the snake eating its own tail or something. That's the multiplicity for the sake of multiplicity. You end up with no unity afterwards. It's like drowning in the waters. Just increase of waters. Everything drowns. Chaos. No structure anymore. And so the inclusion of everything for the sake of inclusion is this same exact pattern. If this is making any sense. So a lot of implications of not having a principle to follow. In some sense, being a pagan is 100 times better than being somebody with an unknown principle or worshiping a strange principle. But I think it's also important that this is happening within a Christian context. So the reason why they're following an unknown principle is because they've actively rejected Christianity. Mechanically, as in the way it happened, might not have been like they sat down and thought about specifically Christianity and then just decided to go against it. It's like going against Christianity is almost like it's gonna sound weird, but it's almost like a tradition in today's world, right? It's like something that's almost passed down or whatever. I'm sure some elite figures are doing it consciously too, but to try and undermine it. But still, it's like it's something that's very common today. It's very easy to fall into it without having to think about it too much. Even right, so I'm saying you can follow this pattern of going against Christianity without noticing that you're even doing it, because it's just so much part of normal life today. And so worshiping a foreign principle is another way of saying of like going against the current principle that your society is following or that it was built on. Right? You don't, if you have, let's say you're a tribe, you have 0 principles, you don't just follow no principles. You figure some principle out so you can unite as a tribe, some sort of identity. And then you have one identity versus another identity. I don't know, like one pagan versus another pagan tribe. But if you have this overbearing Christian structure that built so much of the world, and then now it's falling apart from the inside, that's people worshiping a foreign principle today is literally, actually, specifically a Christianity eating itself alive, or the Christian world. If this is making sense. Thank you, Gregory. Oh no, they're talking about something else.
Yes.
Oh,
Where are
okay.
we? Yeah. So I really do think that Noah figured it out.
I'd say
Now,
yes.
I also like the idea of it being that one is prime and one is divisible by 7. But you put the two together, that just it's much simpler.
Well,
Potentially it's
I'm not-
both, and that's how silly Matthew is. Like I wouldn't put it past him. But yeah, Noah, man, I didn't even think to do adding. Cool.
The sum of them is 4 sixes. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there is something there that I missed. You okay?
It's not just
Sure.
it's not just 3 6s. It's 4 6s. It's
Just
like, oh no, oh no.
Okay. Either way, I'm not good with numbers, anyways.
Okay.
But
What's up now?
I'm saying either way, I'm not good with numbers. So
Okay.
yeah.
No, you unmuted.
But
Were you going to say something? Whoop whoop.
Yeah,
Okay.
Gordon, what was the where we said like that? Oh, like Western, like I guess they aren't pursuing a principality that's clear. That's clear, and like that the end result is a dissolution of like hierarchy that kind of works its way which is really working against reality, like, or working against the basic structure that Matthew is pointing out.
Nice.
well, I guess the longer you follow an unknown principle, the more you increase in flood. In some sense, that's another way of looking at it. I don't think the story of the flood is just God making this arbitrary decision or whatever to flood the land. It's another way of saying that this is kind of like a natural consequence, but saying that it's God doing it has a very specific reason for being there. Can't quite articulate it, but it's the increase of. So it's very important that the flood happens as a result of the generations of Cain, and I suppose the generations of Seth that didn't do that much better, but whatever. So I know Noah is a descendant of Seth. I think the idea is that after the flood, there's no more Cain, no more of the lineage. Maybe some way he sneaked himself in. Some tradition, I think, states so, at least according to Matthieu, I think. But that's not in the book. I think that's from one of the DMs. Either way, it's like
Cain and Abel are descendants of Adam and Eve, and Adam and Eve follow an unknown principle because that's sort of what happens with the fall. That's what the fall is. So they used to have this known principle, God. They went against God, and now they have no God, or increasingly less and less God because they're moving towards an unknown principle. So that ultimately leads to the generations of Cain destroying themselves and suicide. There's a midrash. This is in Matthew's original book that talks about how Cain's family basically. I'm butchering this, but they basically end up killing each other. So it's like his lineage just commits suicide in some weird sense. And mhm.
It's about Tubal Cain killing Cain, I think. It's like subtly hinted at.
I have to find. I have it in a note somewhere, but it's a specific midrash that actually has this story. It's an actual story. But I have to find it and I quote it. Okay, whatever. So either way, that's what happens when you don't follow a known principle. It's like you're moving towards suicide. So one of the reasons why you're collecting heaven and earth together without uniting them to a point, it's good, like a purpose, is because you don't know what to do with your life. And so this collection of heaven and earth is like a substitute to get a sense of purpose, but in reality you have a void. So it's like it's the same pattern as using drugs to fill in a purposeless life. So you have this void, you don't know what to replace it with. And especially narcotics, like hardcore narcotics, they put you in this position where you need to do extreme stuff to acquire them, and then it's like a fake purpose in a sense. It's a substitute, it's like a parody. And so a lot of these guys, elites on top, are basically doing the same thing. The way I understand it. It's like it's a form of suicide in a sense. And because that's the case, they want to try and control the renewal process. So that would automatically mean that they're trying to control death, actually. And through death, control the renewal process. In other words, people are trying anything and everything to not die. See, death has a purpose there. There's a reason why God created death. And it's not because God was evil or whatever. It's because it's a natural consequence of having two opposites under a higher unity. You're going to have life, and then if you're going to have an opposite to life, then it's automatically going to be death. So it's kind of a question of how you can have unity and multiplicity in union at the same time without them canceling each other out in some sense. And so us studying the world is like us increasing multiplicity, maybe not so much creating it, but we discover new things, and that discovery of new things is like fitting into the corpus of knowledge we have about the world, and that's increasing in multiplicity. But then we have to submit that corpus of knowledge to a specific purpose. Otherwise, it becomes useless and then destructive if it's paid too much attention to without a purpose. So we submit them to a purpose, and then we get a increase of multiplicity, but then a stronger unity that is able to include all these new things. Kind of like that. And so
That was really, really insightful, and I want to make sure I caught it. So I'm going to repeat it back to you, and you tell me if I've correctly reproduced that identity. Okay, so you said death is necessary to contain two opposites under the same hierarchical principle. Would it be correct to say that including two opposites, A and not A, that A has to die at some point to include not A? Is that what we're saying?
Let me think this through.
Okay.
A and not A is alpha. I don't know. It isn't A, it's alpha. It's not A.
No, I think for God to exist, for God to exist, that if we're talking about capital G God, then it doesn't make sense. But for a purpose to exist, you need those two opposites. In that perspective, the principle, the high part, would be the unity aspect, the life aspect, and then the multiplicity below would be like the death aspect. Literally, because it's multiplicity, and it's like the opposite of unity. Let me think this through. No, I'm saying death is kind of like a natural consequence if you're gonna have something like multiplicity in the first place. It's just what it is. Death is another way of saying multiplicity.
So in
But
the
that's
example of kayfabe, that prevents someone from being a loser and therefore dying. But if you had
Mhm.
a true competition, the sort of bracket of who's up next to fight goes out in this hierarchy, and in order for that principle to be at the top of determine who is the best fighter, then entities have to die on the way up, right?
Yes, exactly.
So that's the nature of death comes in the breaking of a fractal branch into two options.
Yes, exactly. I think we get to a point where, so if you have A and not A, I think we get to a point where A has to die only as a result of the fall. If you have something like a fallen state, like an unknown principle, then A has to be willing to die, but then not A sort of has to do it for the sake of renewal, not for the sake of just increase of multiplicity.
So
So
let me point to an example before the fall for us to consider. We have masculine and feminine, and
Mhm.
that's a break in a fractal tree where you have a human who becomes male and female. So
Yes.
the breaking has to happen with a falling asleep in this case, and that will
Mhm.
give us our two extremes: one masculine, one feminine, opposites, exact opposites.
Yes.
And those exist in a hierarchy before the fall via sleep, right?
Yes. The difference is, both have a taste of each other without going fully into one or the other. After the fall, it becomes fully one or fully the other because it's like a competition all of a sudden. In a sense, it's kind of like sort of competitive within the garden too, but it's in the garden, it's like taste of one, taste of the other. Taste is like, it's like the concept of one or the other put together and united. Literally, what it means is like you do it partially. And so if you do it partially, it also means you're doing your own thing also partially. So it is a kind of like a form of self-sacrifice. So it's very abstract, but what I'm really saying is something like death is different from sleep, because sleep is like a taste of death, but it's not going fully into death. If you've already fallen, if you're in a fallen state, that it seems like you have to go fully into death for the sake of renewal of everything. At least that's what I understand from Christianity so far. But in the garden before the fall, the tasting of death is good enough because you just need to understand that it exists and know enough to be able to contemplate it, and then take your time to contemplate it without having to fully make it part of your identity or integrate it. And so that means up until that point, you're not even integrating it, you're not using it, you're just thinking about it. See what I mean? And so that's very different than immediately just fighting it or accepting it.
I like this. So if we have two things existing that are opposites and they're, let's say, tasting each other's opposite states without integrating it to their own death, then the image of that is the fractal tree that burns but is not consumed, right? A burning bush, it's on fire, one extreme, but it's not being eaten, which is the other extreme. Or it's a virgin who's pregnant, for example. Two opposites, a pregnant woman who has, I'm bringing this back around to on fire but not consumed, pregnant but not known a man. So so that the paradoxal state is somehow this union of opposites. Is that what we're getting to?
I'm not sure. I'm thinking it through. It's a really good insight. I have a feeling it's not exactly that. I might be wrong. I have a
Okay.
feeling that that's already too much of an extreme, and you wanted to have a taste of the extreme without the full extreme. Because sleep is something that everybody does, but a burning bush that's not consumed, I guess maybe it's like a. I'd have to think it through.
Okay.
I think
I'm
that image.
dabbing in the dark.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Although, by the way, I've seen icons, but the connect those two images you just talked about. That was very cool what you said. I've seen icons where it's Moses. Yeah.
Yeah. that's where I get all my good ideas from.
Oh, I'm thinking it through because it might be because so all the generations after Adam and Eve are in a fallen state. So that means they have God, but they don't. There's something missing about the understanding death well enough to understanding God well enough to participate. Of course, God is always a mystery, so there's always something new to find out about God. That's obvious. But I mean, not knowing what to do with death, it's like a collective. This might be a wrong thing to say, I guess, but it might be like a collective exile for everybody ever since Adam and Eve until Christ, something like that. Or some version of it. Because they're struggling with this problem that they can't solve. And so it might be that paradox is an image that's supposed to break you out of the cycle of this problem that you're dealing with, so they can look at things from a different perspective, from an outside perspective of the tree of knowledge of good and bad. This is me and my intuition talking. I might be talking complete nonsense right now, so how I think about it. Maybe I'd have to think it through. But the intuition is moving in the right direction, I think so, yes. It's kind of like that. It's like a taste. A reason is, see, the whole problem is that when you have something you're not supposed to do, like God tells them, don't eat from the tree of knowledge and good and bad. It's like a no. So that's already a form of bad, by the way. A lot of things are leading up to the whole point of bad. And the whole problem with tree of knowledge of good and bad is that it includes bad. Some people missed this discussion. I was talking about it in the very beginning, but you have something like tree of life, and so that's if you compare it to tree of good and bad, it's like, all right, tree of unity, tree of one, tree of good, obvious, in comparison to tree of death, tree of multiplicity, tree of good and bad. And so it's a problem of what do I do with this thing that now has bad in it. And the whole story of Adam and Eve seems to be kind of leading up to this point. There's nobody to work the garden, bad, so Adam gets created. It's not good that Adam works alone, that's bad, so he gets put to sleep. Sleep is a taste of death, bad. Eve gets created. And in the garden, she's not even Eve, right? I think you were alluding to this, Anna. It's kind of like in the garden, this is very important and very cool. I love this detail so much. There's no Eve, it's Adam and the woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of pointing that they're both united under the same identity. It's kind of cool. And so it's Eve is like a taste of death because she's part of Adam, but she's an opposite, right? Made from Adam's side, made from during his sleep. And then God comes, and then God is like the full revelation of the pattern of bad, or something along those lines. The way it seems to me, I'm not sure. And then he says, "You cannot eat from this tree." Suddenly, no, and no is a form of bad because
How do
obviously.
y'all? I'm riffing on a thought I just had. How do y'all feel about the idea that in the garden, when you're near the beginning and you're walking with God, the man is able to name his wife, but we're fallen, and so the state we live in is that men will pursue women, but it's really the woman who's making the choice to say, "You are my husband." Like
I
he'll
think,
ask the question, but she's the one who makes the decision about what she is.
yeah, I think that's part of a fallen state in our today's world. It's a bit difficult to. I'm struggling with this myself, but for sure, Adam naming Eve was a total mistake. It's the highest explanation of the fall, I think, in my opinion, because when it's Adam and the woman, Adam is not. He shares his identity with Eve in that moment, and so it doesn't mean that Adam is like the ultimate identity, and then there's this side thingy, whatever. No, he's sharing the identity, and as a result, the identity is now higher. It's even abstract. It makes sense that it's his identity because he's male, and male is the one who has the seed, and female is the one that receives the seed. So, from a seed perspective, that kind of makes sense. But they're sharing the identity, so it's kind of like a union of two. So it's a taste of each other in a sense. And then the fall happens. You have the entire curse. God explains what's about to happen now as a result of the fall. These are the consequences of your actions. And then the very, very, very first thing that happens after the fall, God finishes the curse. First sentence after the curse, Adam names Eve. That's the fall. Adam
Oh,
names
the
the
naming
animals.
occurs after the fall.
Right. Is the first thing
Yeah,
that
yeah,
happens
yeah.
after the
Never
fall.
mind. I retract what I said. Okay, I just didn't have the text in front of me, and I just misremembered. Okay. Yep.
I love that detail so
Yep.
much. That's why I was saying in
First
the
thing
garden
he
it's
does
Adam and
is
the
like,
woman.
yeah, and it's the first thing he was commanded to do was to name the creatures. But she's not a creature. She is man.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's
Adam
the
names the
problem.
animals.
Yeah, he names the animals. You don't name your woman.
You give your name to your woman. You don't name her.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
That's very
Okay, I
different.
like that. Yeah, I like that.
If you give your name, it's a form of sacrifice. It's not you're sharing now.
Right.
Of course, if you think about it more from a more feminist perspective, it's kind of stupid. But in
Oh,
the
I learned
symbolic sense, it
something.
makes perfect sense. Mhm.
I learned something about Islam. So in Islam, the woman doesn't take her husband's name, which my
Hmm.
understanding of why that would be the case is it forces uh, women who would make a bastard to absolutely stand out. If you have your mother's last name, damn, it means you
Hmm.
don't have a dad, and you're anyway. That was an interesting thing I learned about Islam is that they have their father's name, but the woman does not take, which again points to like the reason I'm pinging upon it is because, well, it's such a very simple thing, but I think it's really profound to discern the difference between Islam and Christianity. How do we treat the union of the two? And if you treat the union with you and your wife as never being able to become one, you're gonna have problems. But that's just me riffing on that. Oh, you're listening. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, it was very much news to me. Like that was something that I had heard in like Spanish culture, I believe, which may have an influence because of the Moors. That women will hyphenate their name, and so that's when you get like people with many, 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 many hyphenated names, is because they're named after different family members, but different family members have multiple hyphens. And anyway, um, it could be a carryover of the Moorish invasion as to why the Spaniards have that tradition. What do y'all think?
I'm back. Sorry, I had to get a drink.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. So what you're describing really makes sense with how I think Islam works and what its philosophy is, for sure.
That's yeah. I mean, I'm not
Especially in more extreme examples.
right.
Like if you see, let's say the burqas and whatnot, where it gets very extreme, it's like an extreme version of this. But it's
Right.
not, their intuition is not completely wrong as to what their religion is about. It's kind of like Noah collecting the animals, some horrible sense. But yeah.
The other dilemma is that their mosques have no lid on them because you can't put a lid on God, sort of thing.
What's a lid
And
in a mosque?
oh,
Like
the roof.
Okay, they have roofs.
They're
What do you mean?
they're open air, like they're up there. The mosques don't have roofs. There's parts of the building that has roof, but like whatever area, I don't know all the different areas of the building of a mosque, but like the place that they're in together, where the women are uh, in the back room with a roof, the men are in the area without a roof.
That's probably rare and a cultural thing. Most mosques do have a roof, actually.
I'm talking about the tradition that has been going on for such a very long time that they're shifting gears now with modern buildings and modernity in general. But
Well, I'm saying that because in my country, I'm from Macedonia, right? And it was occupied by the Ottomans for 5 centuries or so. And so we have
yeah,
a lot of old mosques there. And so all of them have a roof. It's not exactly. I think those that are kind of built like to look like Mecca and inspired by Mecca, especially that part with the black box, forgot what it's called, then maybe those areas are doing what you're describing. But the
well,
old mosques of Iran and whatnot, they have a like a normal building.
I'll have to look it up again. But my understanding of a big difference between Christianity and Islam is that they don't think that you can in any way, shape, or form encompass God. And God is the
Okay.
Father, and God is ultimate authority and power, and that's one of the reasons why there's such an awful disparity between how women get treated and how men get treated. Is men are like God and women are like cattle.
Um, I think your intuition is 100% on point because there's something unique. Let's say if you compare Islam, Judaism, and Christianity,
Mhm.
there's something that's very unique to Christianity. In fact, compared to all religions, ours is the only where God dies. God is immortal everywhere else, but in Christianity, you can say there's a divine aspect that's always immortal, whatever theological, but that's not the point. God has the capacity to die. Of course, resurrects at the end because it's God, but no other religion has this. Ours is the only one where God can go into death, even if it's not full death. But in Christianity, it is because Christ dies, and then the harrowing of hell is going to extreme death, and then conquering all of death. That's the story. So
Maybe
ours is
not
the only one.
all, not necessarily. So like there's still the understanding of demigods, for example. And so like that story from Moana, like about Maui, is an actual Hawaiian legend that a child dies in the sea and then becomes a demigod of the sea.
Well, demigod is an admixture for me. It's like a Nephilim. The way I
Right.
understand.
Right. So it's not the full understanding of God, but it's like the idea that there's
No, there are a lot of
path
for
through
sure,
death to be a higher plane.
for sure. Like a lot of old religions hint at stuff like this. It's not. It's just that
Christianity, for some reason, has a complete thing, and then it connects it to God specifically dying. You have people, you have other characters, but God Himself, that's very unique to Christianity. Right? And think about it. The incarnation is a form of God moving into death. Like, what is He doing turning into a human being? And so that's a form of, right, into flesh, into His. So man and women are made in the image of God. So you have the God. So now you have Jesus, Son of God, and then Son of the image of God. It's like two opposing things. By the way, same structure in Christ. Son of man, Son of God, two opposites, united both to have the one God.
Yeah.
Gordon, you were going to explain that. Oh, sorry. Dallas, are you talking about this one, this image, the Globetrotters and Generals thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can come back to it, no problem. Well, it's all connected, all of this, anyways, because this is about the tree of knowledge of good and bad, and then all of us are just talking about the different aspects of the tree of knowledge of good and bad. So what we're talking about right now is just moving towards the how the solution works. I'll add this example, and then I want to just say this because I think it's cool, but then I'll come back to the image. There's an old Eskimo tradition. If you guys, Martin Shaw is like one of my favorite people for sure. Like his storytelling is amazing. He has this story online. It's called The Listener. It's 4-part series. I've only watched half of the first part, but it's one of my favorite stories, even though I've only watched like an eighth of it or whatever. Bad maths, but whatever. So it's called The Listener. I said Eskimo. It's not Eskimo. It's Seneca. My bad. And in the Seneca tradition, the main character, there's this moment where he's facing something like a witch, and he does this ritual. He grabs a bunch of ash, throws it in the air, and then it turns into snow. That is literally the image of turning death into renewal, which is what Christ does all the time. Ash as being death is very obvious, right? You burn something, turns into ash. But snow, if you have to think about it, so you have all these plants around you. Let's say you're in the forest. Winter comes. Winter is very cold, very destructive for life. But then the snow covers all these plants, ironically keeps them warm, and then as a result, the plants get to survive. And then after winter is gone, you have spring, and then you have renewal. And
That's
so
literally
snow,
how cloud seeding works.
huh?
It's also the way actual snow works. You can't just create snow out of nothing. It needs a particulate to create its structure.
Okay.
So that's actually like the physics of how snow or water droplets. It doesn't need to be snow, but any time that you need to have things move from cloud state, which is technically a fifth form of water, into either ice or liquid, it is requiring to have a particulate around which to bind. If you have a secured environment where there's nothing but the gas, it's just going to get colder or hotter. It's not going to make anything form ice crystals like snow or water droplets to form rain.
That's very interesting.
And the
Matt,
phenomenology that we can see from space of it happening is all the blow off of the African plains and whatnot goes all the way across the Atlantic and creates the hurricane thing that we have.
Huh.
It's because of all those particulates off of the desert of Africa that seed these natural formations. Were it not for Africa being so dusty, we would not have as strong hurricanes. This is stuff I'm pulling up from like working with weather people in the military. So
Oh, I hear stuff like this and I can't stop thinking like they're controlling the weather. It's like it's kind of sounds like it's not that complicated of a process either.
Oh
But
no,
this is very
it
cool.
is. It is like it's.
I mean, I'm quite ignorant on the subject anyway, so kind of speaking out of my butt. Or whatever. Okay, this is very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that throwing dust into the air and it creates clouds is creates snow is actually like the actual process of how snow must happen. There is no other way.
That's so cool.
Yeah. That's really the
Nah,
point
that's
I was
great.
trying to get across with all the explanation is this is the way.
It's really crazy when you see this pattern applied in like scientific stuff. It's like that's when it
Well,
gets
yeah,
really,
yeah,
really
yeah,
good.
yeah. That's the whole thing is like science is catching up with what like the ancients have known for such a long time.
Hmm.
You're saying in the beginning there was nothing? And then bibbity bobbity boop?
Something.
Something? Yeah, guys, we've been saying that for like 6,000 years now.
Yeah. Candace says this. That reminds me of how the story of creation tells about waters coming up from the ground,
Mhm.
but not through precipitation at first. This precipitation comes then as a part of renewal process, taking ash and turning it into a flood. I'm not sure.
A funny little other scientific discovery relatively recently is that there is technically more water inside the mantle and crust of the earth than there is in all of the oceans by a large factor.
So it's like
It's like
all the
it's
earth is
just
basically a
trapped as
sponge.
being part of the rock.
Huh.
Like it's water, but if you have a single atom of water that's encased in granite, but there's so much rock and so much density to the earth that there's actually more water in the rocks than there is in the below, right? There's more water in the subterranean land than there is in the seas.
We're sitting on sponges, basically. That's very interesting.
Yeah, a massive, very thick.
Yeah, but that kind of plays into the concept of Earth containing water. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, which is obvious, but as in, that's so interesting. Oh, I'm so bad with science, to be honest. It's one of the things I really need to get into. I mean, science is such a broad.
And if you look at it from the scientific perspective of like how exactly would the earth have formed, there would have been some form of like waters that were just above this blob of a mass, and the blob of a mass eventually became what we know of as earth. But before there was man, before there was separation between whatever, there was a gravitational field that's sucking gas particles and water molecules and whatever else into an arena that's surrounding the earth, and then as it keeps getting more and more mass, the waters descend and then create the waters below, and the waters below are separated by land.
Hmm.
It's literally the description of how the earth would have formed.
I mean, it's interesting that it coincides, and I think they would notice this pattern happening through some experimentation, because there's this moment. Anytime you interpret phenomena, you're always engaging in a form of symbolism, any form of phenomena. And so one of the benefits that ancient or pre-ancient people, like let's say caveman people, had is that they had almost no knowledge about the things around them besides knowledge about how to survive. And so that very, very, very basic knowledge put them in a position where whenever they interpreted any phenomena, they were immediately dealing with the highest symbolism possible, because that was the only thing accessible to them. So I'd be careful with let's say, looking at it and then seeing it as them interpreting some sort of scientific phenomena the way we do it today. But the fact that that pattern applies to both the science and, let's say, symbolic structures of how, I don't know, hierarchies work, how people behave, how and identities form, all of that. It
Mhm.
makes sense that that pattern applies to both cases. That's the way I'd look at it.
Right.
So they probably have uncovered the pattern itself, the pattern, and then that happens to apply to the scientific discoveries as well. As in, like, there's intermediary aspects between the two of them. If that's making more sense.
Mhm.
Dallas said something like, "Is mother of all living about including everything?" I have a feeling, I can't wrap my head around this, but I have a feeling there's a connection between Mother Mary and the rainbow. She's like, in icons, she's known as the throne of wisdom. And there are plenty of icons where Christ is like sitting on Mary's lap as a baby. But then there are other icons where Christ is sitting on top of a rainbow. So there's some connection. Especially because Mary means something like bitter waters. It's
Well,
crazy
the
that it's
rainbow
bitter
is
waters.
the rainbow is also the sign that God will not destroy the earth by water again. But
It's the inclusion of
he's
everything.
gonna
That's why.
he's gonna destroy it by, well, Christ. Right? It's like, I'm not gonna destroy it by water. Baby Jesus.
Well, he just used fire next time, basically. Right? Then he had Sodom and Gomorrah, and he was like, all right, can't do flood, but I can nuke them. Carpet bombing or whatever. That's a stupid joke, but no. Rainbow is very deep. It has to do with like my interpretation is that it has to do with the discovery of hope, which is my interpretation collected from the stuff from this book here. Has to do with like inclusion of foreign principles with the hope that one day they'll be answered. And so part of the flood is also Noah and the ark. It's not just the flood with the waters. It's almost like, if you see it, there's a hierarchical structure to it, which is very cool. You have Noah in the center. Just think about it in terms of like a drawing or something, like an icon. Noah in the center. And then further away from Noah, you have his close family. Further away from his close family is his extended family. Further away from that are the animals. And you can do like domestic, whatever, wild, and then creepy crawlers or whatever.
And then the things
then-
of the sea.
And then technology. So the dead wood, the ark itself, and then the sea. And so it's like center and periphery, and then how it moves hierarchically. It's very cool. So
Another
he includes-
aspect too about the rainbow is the physics of it, where you can be in a relatively similar environment, like, you're both experiencing the rain and the clouds and the sun, but depending on your relationship to those things, some people can see the rainbow and some can't. And when you do see the rainbow, everyone who's able to see the rainbow sees a different rainbow because it's from a different angle. But then you can get outside of the ability to see the rainbow.
It's interesting. I don't know how to tie it in with this, but that's interesting. It might be a case of details, too much details. So I'm not sure if it's. It
Well,
probably
you
has to do
mentioned
with
something
like,
about the hope, right? The idea
Right.
is that I've had this experience that's just totally beautiful. And we all experienced the same thing, but when you were over there, you didn't see it. You didn't get it. And it was real. Like, other people were like, yeah, we saw it. We have hope.
I see, kind of like that. I think it plays out differently, sir, but intuitively, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
just trying to think about people who are prelingual, trying to explain. Like, a group of them saw the rainbow, and another group who's like in the same tribe, and they were probably in a different area of the fields, hunting or gathering, was like, "Yo, that didn't occur. What are you talking about?"
Well, I think maybe, yeah. I think it's more important to simplify it a little bit more. I think it's something like visible light all of a sudden. Because light is invisible. Because when they talked about light, it wasn't really photons they were talking about. It's more like the thing that suddenly makes things visible so you can identify them, right? Stupid example, but if you're in a dark room, I don't know, you can't walk much. You'll hit yourself on the objects or whatever. You'll trip. Unless you know your room very well, but that's different. But then you turn on the lights, and then suddenly you can identify objects. And so it's almost like it's a visible form of light, kind of like that, I think. Whatever. And then it's an inclusion of different colors. They're all united together. Hold on. I'll have to find the image. It's connected to the Kayfabe image anyway, so all of it sort of is. Peep, 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 peep. I need to get to the Jonas. Oppa, there we go. Okay, look at this. In the story, in the Noah story, it specifically says that it's resting on clouds, and I think it's not so necessary to say, but I think they did it to give a hint. You look at a rainbow, and so you don't know where it starts and where it begins. Like you can drive, I guess, towards where the beginning of the rainbow might be, but you never really find it. At some point, the rainbow disappears because, as from what you said, right? Because at a certain angle, you can't see it anymore, and so you don't know where it starts, where it begins. Might as well be resting on two clouds because that's two unknowns, unknowns, and unknowns by themselves are always linked to complexity and multiplicity.
Well,
Basic structure.
it won't exist if there are no clouds.
That's also true, but this is more in reference to two unknown. I'll make it make sense. Two unknown principles. Two unknown opposites. And then you see the rainbow, and then it literally doesn't have a point because it's like a bow.
Right.
So if you think very simply, like very, very simply, it makes total sense. It's like it's round and there's no point. Not like a mountain. Mountain has a pointy end. And so no point. Okay, so two opposites and a higher principle. That's the structure, right? And so no point, no higher principle. This might as well be a question mark. And then two unknown facts. In fact, you can't even see them as opposites because you can't understand either of them. You can't make sense of the facts.
Right.
And usually it's how it works. If you don't have a uniting principle, over time, you lose your understanding of the facts, can't integrate them as much. So that's the flood in itself. The flood is actually it's destroying the earth. It's destroying the facts. So you can't make sense of the facts anymore. That's why structures fall apart, stability falls apart, whatever. Differences fall apart. That's why we're having a political discussion about what gender is. You can't make sense of the facts anymore, right? Because we've lost the principle. We've lost God, but we've also lost the principle of what marriage is. And if you can't understand what the point of marriage is, then you can't make sense of man and woman, or two opposites, or what marriage even is, or right. And so
RJ's not here. I wanted to ask him about the Talmud's explanation of 6 or 7 different genders.
or 70.
Well, no, I mean literally like it's 6 or 7. I can't remember whether the number is 6 or 7.
Oh, I don't know.
But it's Jewish, quote unquote Jewish.
Talmud, some rabbi somewhere, yeah. Okay,
Right.
so here's same image of the rainbow, just made for is the autistic version, I guess. I don't know, but it makes it a lot clearer.
Oh.
So two unknown facts on the bottom, one unknown principle, and so you don't know what to unite under. So that's the problem. The rainbow, the symbol of the rainbow resting on the clouds, is a description of it's a microcosm of what just happened with Noah. The entire story of Noah in the ark surviving the flood is basically this. It's the same exact thing. In fact, when you have two unknown facts, like the unknown principles doesn't have to be two, but whatever. If the opposites are unknown, they look the same. Can't differentiate them if you don't know them. So might as well be just one sea or flood or whatever.
The Uniparty.
The Uniparty. There you go.
I don't know what either of you up to. You're the same thing, though.
Leading to the kind of interesting, eh?
Unclear,
It's a-
pointless principle. Like, what is this? What are you? What do you actually believe?
So here's what gets really funny. Unknown principle also automatically means secret principle. And so if you live long enough under an unknown principle, I think as a natural consequence, you're going to end up with a conspiracy in the background running things from behind. It's inevitable. It's not even like, oh, just people exploit it because it's a good opportunity. That's probably how they interpret it, but it's actually like an inevitable consequence. There's no other way things work out. Because if you don't have a known principle, then your elites are not following a known principle. They're confused. And so you run this course long enough, you're going to end up with a conspiracy in the background. It's just something has to keep some form of tradition alive. You know, one of the craziest things, in my opinion, is going to be such a crazy thing to say, but one of the craziest benefits of having somebody like BlackRock or all these huge companies like controlling everything is they're keeping this kind of like slow and steady tradition of corruption, which gives some form of tradition so that the country remains stable enough to have some form of game to play so it doesn't all lose itself in confusion. Of course, it's evil and horrible, but it's kind of funny that their game is giving some sort of structure to it in the background. You need to have a structure. You just can't not have a structure. You can be all anti-hierarchy all you want, but you're just making the hierarchy implicit. And so it's a natural consequence of not having a known principle is you end up with a conspiracy soon enough.
I
Somebody
would
has to
say that
rule.
the organizing principle could be
Uh-huh.
oblivion.
What do you mean by oblivion here?
Yo, making everything not exist. Like the idea of like I'm wanting just to have everything destroyed and die.
Yes, for sure. I think it ultimately leads to suicide. Yes, that's exactly it.
Right.
Very dense. That's what I was talking about before, where you collect heaven and earth, but there's no reason for it. It's for its own sake. And so that's I think equivalent to the snake eating its own tail. It's for its own sake in a sense. It's self-referential. That's a form of suicide. A bit of that is sometimes okay. It's not that so. It's like a form of vanity. What that is. Vanity is not evil in and of itself. You need something like, let's say I'm working. I work at
Vanity
a
of vanities.
kind of like that. Yeah. But I was gonna say like, I go to work. It's some difficult job, but I work hard to achieve a specific purpose in the job. Especially if it's a good company or whatever. So I come back home. I'm tired, and the way I rest is by doing nothing in particular. It's like I do something useless, something that's specifically useless so I can rest. Video games, movies, whatever. None of this has any practical use. But that helps me rest. And so vanity has this very important purpose here that's can't be excluded. But if you
So
have an
long as
unknown
it's not
principle,
vainglory. So long as it's not vainglory.
and so that's what I was coming into, going for, is that if you have an unknown principle, so this is the same thing said from a different perspective. You're making vanity the principle. You're making unknownness, strangeness, earth the principle, because that's what unknown is. And so that's when you get to vainglory. It's like vanity on top, in some sense, glorified vanity. It shouldn't be there. It should be placed in its own place in the hierarchy. But now, if it's on top, then
I think
playing
this
a
is
different
why
game.
I love Bitcoin.
Okay.
Is because it removes the ability to have vainglory in the idea of money. Like, you're not allowed to cheat the system. Money usually is the thing. The love of the money is the root of all evil. And you can love Bitcoin, but the thing that is above Bitcoin is the founding principle upon which all else is made, math.
Hmm.
That's all it is math. Essentially, it's the mind of God.
Aspect of it, but yes, I see what you're going for.
It's right. It's way better than. Trust me, this is worth something.
Kind of conflicted about Bitcoin. There's also the aspect of Bitcoin not being made by somebody we know.
Correct.
So it has like
Now
this
think
unknown
about
origin.
it. If you were the person to come up with the idea to revolutionize the global economy, so that we actually fix money, so we don't have emperors and kings fiddle farting around with the
I
supply.
just want to jump in here real quick. I don't want to go too far down this road. I want to go back to what Gordon was saying here about the vainglory.
Well, yeah,
Yep.
that's what I mean. It fixes money. Like, people glorify money. They do it for the money, the love of the money. If you fix the money, you fix the problems, because you can't love the money the way you used to. It's fair.
No. So this applies to all scales of reality. So they'll find something
Yeah.
else. They'll find another way. So even if you fix the quote unquote money problem in terms of the physical, or in this case digital money that we're using, it doesn't solve the entire problem, because the entire problem is everywhere. So this love of potential is it's how we behave with our families too. It's how we behave with our friendships. Like especially post COVID, my generation, I'm 26 for reference. It's like
Mm.
a lot of it's like a it's almost everybody sees this now. It's like a lot of people hang out and it feels like they're using each other. There's no common point of unity anymore. Some activity maybe, but it's not real. Something about it feels very fake. And it feels like everybody's just using each other to fill some sort of social like battery or whatever. I don't know how else to say it. But it's not real. It's kind of like they're vampiring each other. Might be a dumb example, but it's unity under an unknown principle in some sense, for the sake of filling in this void. So it's like filling in a void is like achieving a fake purpose. Might as well be. The whole point of the void is that you find a principle so that you can follow it, not to fill in the void with something. So this pattern is applying everywhere. It's not just the elites being obsessed with money. This is everybody. It's a very actually. Here's a. I wasn't sure we were gonna get into the rainbow today, but now that we did, there's a very interesting way this pattern is playing out. So the corrupted rainbow, the way I understand, this is my interpretation. The corrupted rainbow, I think, happens when you put hope as the highest principle. The idea is you collect all these foreign principles. So Noah gets all these animals, which are foreign principles. Those are foreign principles he's able to identify, right? Because Adam names the animals, and so I guess they're named animals. Either way, they're still not human, so foreign principles.
Mm-hmm.
With the hope that one day they'll be answered. They'll be united under a common principle for everybody. God, specifically, in Noah's case. So, the corrupted version of this, I believe, is when hope becomes the highest principle. And so it's like we're going to include everything, unite everything for its own sake. So it's not for a specific reason, not for the sake of one day getting the answer. It's for its own sake. There's a comment somewhere here in the book where Matthieu says, like, the rainbow cult is almost like the establishment of, or something like God telling Noah that he has plenty of time to figure out how to ruminate on whatever he's trying to figure out and then figure it out. It's almost like the discovery of rumination. It's like God telling Noah, listen, humanity was made bad since its birth, something like that. I'm misquoting it, but take all the time in the world to figure it out. Sooner or later, you'll find out what the whole thing is about. So that's what hope is. Hope has to rely on one day there being an answer. So it's like a bridge towards you and God, or towards the unknown problem and then God. Right? That's why the full pattern is Christ sitting on top of a rainbow. Because Christ now answers the rainbow. And the rainbow
Right.
supports. Right. He's the
That
answer to
image,
it.
that image of Christ on top the rainbow is, yes, you can have hope, right? Like it's like the idea of money.
No, it's like
Don't
hope
love,
finally answered.
don't love hope. Love
Yes.
hoping in Christ.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right? And so the point of hope, in my opinion, is that that's when you need it when God is missing. It's almost as if when Christ walks around and keeps telling people to have faith, it's almost like people have a problem and it's like, Christ, I have a problem. And it's like this unknown, it's like they're lacking the answer to their problem. So it's like they're lacking God as an answer to their question. And he's like, have faith. And I think faith is something like the rainbow. It's like a bridge. All right, build a bridge between your problem and God. You don't know God at this point,
Heavenly bridge.
as in
Heavenly
he's
bridge.
hidden. A heavenly bridge, of course. Whatever.
Yeah.
But it's automatically heavenly because it's abstract. I think it's, but whatever. So, even though God is hidden for you at the moment, have this bridge with the hope that one day it'll be answered. And so you do that. You have patience, and then one day it gets answered, and then people get healed. Although with Christ that happens very quickly, but it has to sort of. But I think that's how it works. And so yes, it's like you have to hope for one day getting an answer to the questions, a proper answer. And so that's like hoping for God. It's a very high way of saying it. But if you make hope the entire principle, then you know how most of the characters in the Bible, when they go to Egypt, they usually leave Egypt with wealth. And so they go into death and they come out of it wealthier. So it's almost like you can build wealth in exile, right? Because actually, what wealth is a potential. And so exile is when you get an increase of a potential, because the potential is actually killing you. It's an increase of multiplicity. And so you slowly dying is actually you slowly increasing multiplicity, but decreasing in unity, in some sense, in quality, decreasing in quality. And so money has no quality of its own. That's the whole point. It's so you can exchange it to get something off quality. So you can, if you're ruled by greed in a sense, you can say that what you can do is like use the rainbow to keep people or yourself in exile, so you can produce as much wealth as you can handle, or whatever.
Right.
It's like
that's
supposed
called
to.
inflation.
That's called inflation. Yes, it's like an
That's
infinite
the-
money glitch.
Keeping
Problem
everyone to be
is-
slaves.
Mhm. Huh.
I'm serious.
Thankfully, that's not what's happening in today's world.
No, wake up. Wake up. That is exactly why Satoshi Nakamoto is a made up character. Because anyone that actually goes forward with this in real life would definitely be killed ahead of time.
Yeah, high chance. Either way, that's where we have fake money in a sense. It's so we can increase the amount of potential. It's the same pattern. So okay, I didn't give my example yet because I keep talking so much. Sorry. So think of the whole rainbow. That's a corrupted rainbow. It's when you put hope as the highest principle. So you no longer have a principle. You make the fact that you have an unknown principle into a good thing. You see it as a good. That's when it becomes evil. It's okay if you do it temporarily, but if you do it forever, it's evil. We think of the corrupted rainbow cult as the pride parades, but I think those are like it's for sure the thing, but it's like a ritualistic manifestation of this phenomena, of this reality.
Speaking of Pride Month, I figured something out about it. I deciphered what that spell is. PRIDEMONTH. Inside Prith, there is demon. Prith is Sanskrit for to cast a spell.
Okay.
It's literally satanic. It is Luciferian intellect. Very smart. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's great marketing if you're the devil, because it hides exactly what you're doing. You're summoning the devil. Prith, Prith, is Sanskrit for to cast a spell.
Yeah, but
And
I would say
inside that
even if
spell is a demon.
Mhm. I'd say even if it didn't follow that structure, it'd still be the same pattern. But I see what you're going for sure.
But that's what I mean as a spell. How they
Yeah.
spell Pride Month is a fucking spell. Excuse my French, but it is. I
Okay.
dropped that F-bomb on purpose because it's disgusting to me.
Oh, okay. Regardless, I was gonna say the pride parades are like a ritualistic manifestation of this pattern, and I'm describing like a very, very general pattern. This is not just.
Yeah.
It's very explicit in today's world, but it's a problem that people faced throughout humanity at some point
Pride Month
somehow.
summons demons.
No, I'm talking about something else now. So,
Yeah.
here's another way the same pattern applies. So it's inclusion of everything for the sake of inclusion under an unknown principle. So imagine something like Amazon. Back in the day, if you wanted to buy a book, you went to a bookstore. Or if you wanted to buy a couch or something, you went to IKEA. If you wanted to buy groceries, you will go to a supermarket. But now you can buy all these things in the same day, in the same basket in Amazon or on Amazon, whatever. So it's a very unique moment in humanity's history where this is sort of possible. Because what does a couch have to do with a book? Nothing. Not really. That's why they used to be in different stores. But now this is the inclusion of everything. And everything is included under the principle of gaining more capital. Capital is just potential. So it's just another way of saying it's united under an unknown principle. Another way of saying the same exact thing is like, okay, they're making a lot. Amazon is making all this money, all this capital, for what specifically? What are they gonna spend it on? Is there a specific amount of money they need to acquire for a specific purpose? Like, no. And that's the funny part. It's like in today's world, that's even a stupid question. Like, what do you mean money for what? Is to get rich. It's like that doesn't make any sense. That means doing it, increasing in potential for the sake of increasing in potential. So it's literally the manifestation of a lack of purpose. Okay, so now you have all these foreign identities, foreign principles, like somewhat like a book or a couch or whatever, united together under the increase of capital for Amazon, under an unknown principle. It's the same pattern as the corrupted rainbow cult. Same exact pattern. It's not just something that has to do with the pride parades. Part of me thinks that the pride parades are more of a distraction in some sense, like to cause infighting. But the actual deadly pattern is manifested in the companies themselves using this pattern. Same thing with BlackRock. Like, I don't know, the amount of stuff they acquire. Like, what does Disney have to do with like NFL, or what do they have to do with like Coca-Cola? Like, these companies have nothing to do with each other. But if they're all under the rubric of one company that's there for the increase of capital, then it's the same pattern as the corrupted rainbow cult. In some sense, part of me believes that a lot of these elites don't know any other reality other than this one. They're really good at understanding it. They're really good at playing the game, but I don't think they understand any other way or other way of understanding the world.
In order for me to understand what you mean by elites,
Okay.
to whom would you ascribe as being members of the elite club in common parlance of the zeitgeist? Like,
What, a group them? Like, I don't know.
yeah,
Yes.
like name some names that you would like have us be able to understand who these types of characters are.
Well, I think the usual suspects, kind of like Gates and like Larry Fink and Bezos and those types of figures, Musk, PayPal Mafia, Peter Thiel. Those are the things that.
Yeah, the PayPal
Um,
mafia. You're right on cue. The PayPal
I'd say.
mafia.
Mhm.
The PayPal mafia, I believe, are the people that created X. Because when they got together, Peter Thiel has his idea for things. Elon has his idea. I think they did both. And when they all came together, that's Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
But I don't see them as a part of the solution. I see them as the cause of the problem. Although I do think that if those characters were imprisoned or removed,
The problem has been here for a much longer time than.
yeah, for sure. I was gonna say that, like, if you can remove those figures, like today, like, I don't know, Justice finally imprisoned them or whatever, and then the next day you're gonna have people replacing them, like in a snap. So it's this principle, let's say satanic principle, whatever. It doesn't care who it hosts. It's just anybody to get this over with. That's usually the mentality, the way I see it. Okay. But I'm saying, what my point was, this whole corrupted rainbow principle is everywhere. It's not just what we think about directly when we think about politics. It's part of our daily lives. It's how we behave today. Has to do with like um how we make friends in international cities, how immigration is handled in developed countries, how these capital markets work. It's all part of the same pattern. Same thing, just manifested in different, both on different scales and in slightly different mechanical realities. But you see what I mean. It's the same hype pattern, and then it leads towards something like suicide for sure. And then that's a problem. And so the desire to control. See, the problem is they understand that it leads towards death, and so they're trying. At one point, you enter panic mode, I suppose, and then you have to face the question of like, well, if this leads towards suicide, how do we fix it? And since Christianity is sort of out of the question, what you end up with is something like a parody of it, which I think that's what transhumanism is. It's kind of like a parody of the resurrection. But okay, this is getting a bit too deep. It's a bit. Some of the other things you have to explain here, I think, for that to make sense. Although I'm kind of grappling with it
It's a
myself.
parody of creation.
Transhumanism, or no? What did you say?
Yeah, that transhumanism is a parody of creation in that we are the god and we know how to create the image of us in the future.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like the way I see it, it's kind of like in order to renew, you have to go into death. But it's almost like the way they do it. It's like, all right, that means that we suck, we're flawed. It's almost like God made a mistake. That type of philosophy. I guess Gnosticism in some sense, although that word gets thrown around everywhere. And so it's like a form of like, well, okay, since we're flawed, we have to transcend that and become something higher by using technology to avoid death and suffering under all costs. And in Christianity, it's like, no, you bear the suffering and the pain in order to transcend that, and then that death leads to renewal, comes as at self-sacrifice. So it's like a parody of self-sacrifice, the way I see it. Yeah, the way it makes sense for me. Although this is a deep topic for sure.
When we have what I would like to classify these people as would be Nephilim. When we have people that are man-machine hybrids that we're not going to be able to tell if they've had Neuralink implanted and they have access to the processing capacity of the whole globe at once. And they can just appear like a normal person.
Yeah.
We're in a certain sense, I'm a Nazi because I want to label those people constantly so that we have no qualms about understanding who they are. Giving them that special star on their shoulder or whatever, you know what I mean? Like the mark of the beast. Like we need to be able to mark those people so the rest of us normies actually have a fair chance. Like we need to know that they have godlike abilities.
I think the problem with that is that the normies are part of this too. Everybody's participating. It's not just the elites. Although it's very easy to see it as like elites versus normies, but it's not the case. The elites are more like dispensable in some sense.
Right, because the end result is all versus all, and then then you versus yourself in suicide.
Yes. So the only resolution to this is to describe the problem as accurately as possible, and then have like that two opposite structure, and then the ultimate solution is to get insight into the problem we're dealing with. So we're dealing with some question we can't answer, for instance, materialism versus religion. We answer that question, and then that leads to resolution slowly but surely. Of course, I'm not against like elites going to prison or that the whole thing. I think that's, in fact, if nobody gets persecuted, it's like a failed attempt in some sense. But
Correct. And that's why my understanding of the situation that we must do is that anybody that was signed up for the military and they committed treason must be publicly executed.
okay,
We need to have the bloodletting of someone getting in trouble and justice happening. And the people that signed up for that role, that knowing full well that if you get told many times throughout every single year and you get trained on don't sell out America, high treason is executable. Is a crime that is going to be having its punishment doled out by one of two ways: firing squad or hanging. And we haven't done that in like freaking forever. But that's on the books for everybody who's someone who swears an allegiance to the UCMJ, Universal Code of Military Justice. They need to be executed. I'm one of them, right? I'm one of the people that signed up and said, yeah, I agree to all this. I knew full well, right? If I was to take the stance of ruining America, that the repercussions would be not just, oh, we're going to put you in prison, and not just, oh, we're going to like kill you. We're going to make an example of you publicly in not a nice way. I don't see any other way around it. If we don't do anything, that's bad. If we say, yep, let's just destroy everything because we're unhappy, that's also bad. But the only people that we can, like, beyond any reasonable doubt, prove that they were treasonous and publicly execute them for the sake of being scapegoats, which they aren't just taking the blame, they are also guilty. But this is me coming from somebody who was in the military, and I don't think that anyone else, in this group would agree to that, but that's also because you guys weren't in the military.
That kind of sounds like you have a personal stake in this.
Yeah, I do. Everyone who agrees to be in the military has that same personal stake. That's the point.
Hmm.
Like, you can't join the military and not know that.
Yeah, sure.
Constantly. They constantly tell you. You get training many, many times throughout the years.
Hmm. Yeah, there are real consequences to
There
the
has to
problems
be.
we're dealing with. Yeah.
Gordon, could I tempt you one more time to try and go through it with the Noah story? We've been on the call for a while. I don't know if you're out of energy or.
A bit too much, maybe, because I'm on a monster drink, so no worries. You want me to? You want me to do redo the Noah story? Or?
E- Explaining like the very first image with the Noah story.
Okay. This maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, no,
So,
the like
Mhm.
Ted DiBiase and
Oh, that's includes the rainbow stuff, but it's not just for the rainbow stuff. This is tree of knowledge of good and bad in general. So even that's what the title states. It's like, what happens to a civilization with its leaders eat from the tree of knowledge of good and bad? This. So it's like the way I understand it, kind of abstractly, is like they follow an unknown principle, and the thing with death is that death is kind of like linked to nature. Obviously, if you think like there's civilization and there's nature. So civilization is where life happens, and then nature is, at least comparison to civilization, is where death is. Although you can see civilization as a corrupting force too from a specific perspective, but that's a different story. Okay, so you move into death, you automatically move into something like competition. Competition, in a sense, it's vain, right? If it's two tribes having a war with each other, that more or less moves into vanity. Well, it's not a full resolution of the problem. So they're going to keep having wars with each other until somebody either leaves, immigrates, or dies, or gets turned into a tribe of slaves or something. So it's very destructive. And then destruction itself it's a form of vanity. And so the trick is to find the purpose of vanity, which is something like the purpose of renewal. The way I understand it. And so, okay, you get a foreign principle. That foreign principle has two opposites which you don't understand anymore. Because if you have an unknown principle, you can't make sense of the facts anymore. Or increasingly less or decreasingly less sense of the facts. And so you enter this sort of competition between the good aspects of the foreign and then the bad aspects. So this ties into like how we interpret foreigners. Um, you get that trope with the aliens. It's like you have aliens that we either think of aliens as somebody who or as a destructive force that are going to destroy the world, or we see aliens as a force that's going to increase humanity's progress somehow, usually through technology, which is saying something. By the way, I should have mentioned this very, very much before.
That's somewhere in
Worshipping.
between. That's a somewhere in between with the case of the Q entity from Star Trek. He's
Haven't
he's
seen
he's
Star
a
Trek.
he's a liminal character.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. He's basically godlike powers with.
Well, does he have something like godlike powers that are used to help the people on board the ship? Or I haven't seen the series, so I'm not sure.
Right, and this is a character that exists throughout multiple series. And what he's doing is he's involving himself with each of the captains to try and have an understanding of humanity and them understand him. It's about relationship.
If he has something like godlike powers and then he's being helpful, then it's like something like worshiping the alien because the alien is bringing in something new, progressive.
No, it's not
Or
necessarily helping. It's very much a trial. That's generally what
okay.
he's doing. Is he's putting the captain on trial.
Okay. Haven't seen the
Yeah,
series, so okay. Yeah,
that's
interesting.
that's what a judge is neither like looking at it as good or bad, but discerning amongst the stuff as to what is good and what is bad and parsing things.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what you're supposed to do with foreign stuff, to figure them out that way, so we can
Right.
understand what.
That's why I brought him
Mhm.
up, is because he's a unique character in the realm of aliens.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thing is, when your
And
own
he's dying.
people.
That's the other thing too, is he's dying. In the latest
Okay.
series of Picard, that's what you find out, is he's dying. So that's another interesting thing.
So they took a different political turn, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so to get back on this, it's like especially when your own people don't have a known principle, nothing to unite over, whether they realize it at the moment or not, they get met with something strange, and then they get into this competition between whether the strange should be, for lack of a better word, worshipped, maybe celebrated is a better word, or should it be seen as an enemy. And so the whole debate over illegal aliens has to do with this problem, right? So
Whether or not you
it's
obey the law?
no, the political debate itself, the propaganda that's being used to cause infighting over this problem. Like, if you have
Right.
agreement
It's
on
a
the principles
dismissal of
and
the
the
law.
law, then it
It's a
becomes
dismissal
simple,
of the
right?
law.
But if you don't agree on the laws and the principles, then it turns into this competition. And so you have a group of people within the country that don't agree to the laws and think they should be skewed for the sake of inclusion of these foreign principles. That's a sign that the nation itself doesn't have unity anymore. Right? It should be, if it's illegal aliens, the illegal part should have been a simple hint. But since it's no longer a hint, it's kind of like,
That's the spell of undocumented aliens. It's
either way,
ignoring the fact that you're breaking the law.
yeah. Either way, it's like the left and the right don't agree to the same principles, and then this is causing the infighting. That's my point. And so this is it's the inclusion of the unknown, of the bad. That's how that works. So it's like two foreign principles that you can't understand. So that's the worshiping versus the seeing it as a complete enemy, and those two fighting. And then that eventually leads into kayfabe, because you do it long enough, you lose the authenticity, you lose the quality, it turns into a fake version of itself. And behind the scenes, basically controlled. And then you end up in a moment where you have predetermined players in the game. I think it's either a comment or he made a version of the image, but I don't think I have it here, where he had the last image as being Neo from the Matrix in the very last scene of the Matrix. I'm not sure if it's the first movie or I haven't seen the other two movies. No, it's I think the last part of the third movie or something. At some point, it's revealed that everything that Neo was doing was almost like pre-planned. There was like an architect figure or something. I haven't seen the film, so this is a bit of a
Well,
problem, but
it's
whatever.
from the very beginning. He's the one. He's the chosen one. He's the one that's been
Right.
foretold.
And so the whole thing turns out to be fake, and that he was like a fake revolution, basically there to increase. He ended up becoming the control opposition, or he didn't know that he was the controlled opposition from the very beginning. And so you end up in this competition where you're fighting the other side with the sake of winning, so that one day, hopefully, when you destroy the other side, you come out on top, and finally everything is good. And that's not how it works. No, you have two differences, and that competition is actually an opportunity to find higher insight, higher principle. And then when you have that higher principle revealed, then you can unite the two opposites. and then figure out what to do from there. But that's the only structure that brings actual resolution to the problem. Without that, you continue the series of competition, and then it leads into fake competition, then it leads to controlled competition or controlled competition. And then you get with this obsession with avoiding death and suffering at all costs. And so if that means replacing humanity with cyborgs, with immortal cyborgs that can't feel pain and are so much more superior than us, then so be it, as long as there's no longer any death and suffering. It's that type of mentality. And so it seems like that's the consequence of as simple as I can understand it. Yeah.
The creation of Satoshi Nakamoto is the instantiation of a character, quote unquote, who is a just big question mark and is in the game that can't be killed.
Yeah.
That's
the
why
problem with exile.
That's why he had to be unknown as a big question mark. You can't just have one individual or a group of individuals lay claim to this thing that, in order to be able to battle the question marks, itself also needs to be a question mark.
That's a good point. It's kind of like you need double inversion to get out of it.
Correct.
So the problem of exile kind of follows this pattern, I believe. It's like you have this problem and it's destroying everything, and for some reason you just can't kill the problem and get rid of it, and so you have to solve it, and then you have to kind of somehow get out of that cycle, see it from the outside, which is a form of moving into death anyways, in order to fix the problem from the outside. I think, now that I think about it, I think that's sort of what Christ did. It's almost like Adam and Eve got the entirety of humanity into this cycle of exile after the fall, and now the problem of Adam and Eve hasn't been solved for the entirety of the Bible, more or less. It's people getting closer and closer to the answer. And then I think Christ sacrificing himself is him getting himself out of that cycle entirely, and then through resurrection, fixing the problem from the outside. It's an idea, I don't know, but something that popped into my head.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. I'll say this other thing that was very helpful from Matthieu. He said one of the issue we're dealing with today is not so much that there's a key and there's a problem, right? And so it's not, or like a lock and a key. And it's not so much that we've lost the key, it's that we've forgotten what the problem is. So this whole concept of like the entire Bible being an attempt to figure out how to solve the problem of Adam and Eve, like for some reason that's lost. That knowledge is lost today. Like I don't know, I barely hear any churches talking about it, although I haven't looked that much into it. But it's not a common trope that people talk about. In fact, if I discuss it with, let's say, some lay church people, they're gonna find the idea kind of weird. Maybe it's one of those things you read on some obscure online forums or something, but not as an actual thing. Huh? So we've lost the key, but we've lost the problem. We have the key. Something like that. Very, very weird phenomenon.
Right. We have the key. We don't have the lock.
Mm-hmm. But understanding the problem of Adam and Eve is kind of understanding what the actual problem is. Or
So the key has no way to manifest itself. It's like the invisible light. There's no the heavenly principle needs the earth in order to be visible, right?
Oh, I love this. Yes,
it needs the dust in order to create a rainbow. Every single droplet of exists in that rainbow must have a piece of dust in it. It must have earth in heaven in order for that rainbow to disperse the light. That's awesome. Yeah.
And then so that bottom in this like image with the Globetrotters at the bottom,
I don't
Yeah.
know who the generals are though.
that's like
Do you
you
guys
not having the you don't have the earth to reflect. You're not actually engaging with the question. It's like the
Yeah,
opposition
exactly. It's
is
not
faked,
right.
so you're not getting the solution to reveal itself.
Exactly. Or at least reveal itself fully.
Yeah,
It's almost like we're stuck in this moment where we can only partially have it revealed. So we can read some stuff from like, I don't know, ancient monks talking about Christ, and we can get some info out of it, but it's almost like we can't see the full pattern anymore. And as if there was a moment where people could back in the day. Not everybody, maybe, but at least some elites, monks somewhere, right, had this knowledge that they could pass down. Yeah, that's the way I see it. By the way, just to the Globetrotters versus Generals thing, that's like it's a fake setup game between two basketball teams with a predetermined outcome. So it looks like an authentic game, but it's secretly inauthentic. I just mentioned that because I think you, Gregory, asked.
Mhm.
So it's like a.
So I think they would tour together in different stadiums. And it was always the Globetrotters. Like no matter where the game took place, it was always the Globetrotters playing the Generals.
Oh, that's who the Globetrotters always played against is called the Generals. I don't know who they played against. I just know they're really talented.
I think it's like Democratic Party versus Republican Party in a sense. Another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
They're always playing each other. It's always against.
well, I think it's supposed to be. I think Globetrotters is supposed to be the point there, right? It's like the globalism reducing. It's both of the. I think it's like both of these. So what you have in the middle is the corrupted tree of life or the subverted tree of life. Matthew has like this diagram where he's doing this with the Lord of the Rings, and Sauron is in the middle.
If we can find it. Go on. Where do you want me to?
But that's eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, maybe.
Probably these ones. She lies surrounded by waters. And then
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Sauron forges a ring. Yeah.
So and the alien intelligence is that one at the top that's secretly well, so we talked about this point before where the anons on that bottom of the circle, you can't tell the difference between them, so they might as well be joined in one. And that's what you get at the bottom image with the Globetrotters. Both sides are basically serving the Globetrotters either way. It's just like uh it's just kind of
I
it's
see what
this
you mean.
fake competition. It's this fake opposition
It's a
between
good one.
them.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
this. It's like the clouds basically being question marks, and so it's just the two opposites just end up being the same thing exactly because it's just clouds.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about the globalists secretly winning or controlling the outcome either way. And then
Yeah.
the competition between Ted DeBassi and the other guy, I don't know his name,
Ghost.
is fake.
Yeah.
The whole point, yeah.
Also, this is
Gold
an
dust.
interesting image of like conservatives versus liberals. And so the lion versus the ox in a sense. And so one that is all about acquiring potential and separates himself from the potential and then tries to conquer it. And that'll be the Basie guy. However it's pronounced.
I wonder what debasey means. Like of things that are of basedness.
It's a good question.
And then gold
So-
dust would be kind of a
Well, golden dust.
mirror
So it's
image.
like the lowest form of the lowest. It's a Basie is like a French word that means something like sideways, against the grain. I have no idea. A slant, a slope, an oblique. Diagonal line. No,
That's
clue.
what debase
The more I read,
means.
yeah, I just can't figure it out. It's a bunch of words together, but it can be.
So another thing that occurred to me about this unity at the bottom is that Matthew talks about how it's the problem of like trying to replace the feminine with a masculine thing, right?
Mhm.
And so the feminine, the real thing is like you're going into like the raw matter of the earth and dealing with things that are outside of your control. But here they just rig the competition, and it looks they rig it to look like a competition, but they've determined the outcome beforehand. So there's no dealing, because you're not dealing with the facts. There's no new insight. You've already determined what the insight's going to be at the outset. And he describes this as actually being determined by the AIs competing in a chess match.
Hmm.
Which is, I don't know what that looks like exactly.
Well, equal competition, maybe something like that. In a chess game, it's all equal, right? You don't have somebody with a larger cavalry than the other guy, like you'd have in an actual battle. Everybody has the same pieces in chess, so I guess it's like something like that. First thought that pops into my head. Maybe.
Yeah, there's 959 other versions of chess you can play. Fisher, the chess master, grandmaster, created the idea of rearranging the back rows to be mirror images of each other. And that's why I'm bringing it up, is because it's a mirror image, right?
Mhm.
And the rules that the things in the back row have to follow are: you can't have a pre-castled arrangement, so the king can't be in the corner with a rook, with a rook right next to it. So that's one of the rules. The other rule is that the bishops have to be one on each color. You can't have two whites or two black bishops. And I'm trying to remember the third rule for the algorithm. I want to say it's something as simple as the queen still needs to be on her own color. I think that's the answer as well. Pretty sure those are the three rules, but anyway, you can rearrange the back row, and the way we know chess is one of those 960 iterations of the algorithm by which you can still play chess, but now it's an even playing field because even the brightest mind in the world can't memorize every single 960, all the other 959 starting positions, but an AI system could.
Well, this, this in terms of like a point, like a unknown principle. Like chess is originally developed, I think, is like the purpose was for like practicing military strategy and pattern recognition
Mhm.
for noblemen and elites, or for noblemen who would serve in the officer corps of
Right.
I don't know, I can't remember how far back, maybe in the officer corps of for the king, basically, at some point, for their king at some point. And so and it's kind of, if two AI playing each other in pattern recognition game is about as far in a pattern recognition contest is quite far from having a grounding point to in that original tell us purpose. It's like the too much like it's not a clear principle anymore. I'd say like what Fisher was doing would probably be the last point of that. I think so it's in the anyway.
Okay. I don't know about y'all, but I'm gonna warm up some food. I'm gonna still be here though, and whatnot, but I'm just putting myself on mute.
Hello. I was saying, like, I'm thinking of wrapping this up. It's 5 in the morning where I am.
Well, good morning.
Good morning. So,
How long is that monster gonna keep you up for?
not long enough, apparently.
Okay.
So, I can ask in the chat or something, like, see if, how do you guys feel about, like, doing this again, maybe? I'm not sure. Can ask in the chat.
Yeah, I would enjoy it. I appreciated a lot of the insights you shared. So,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'd
Do
like
it.
to. I think
Well, thanks, Gordon.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I talked a lot. I'm sorry. I'm a
Thank you very
blabbermouth about it.
much.
Okay. Hopefully it was helpful. Enjoy the book. I think I've managed to, with the help of others, fix as many of the mistakes as I can. If you find mistakes, please tell me so I can fix them. I want to clean it up as much as possible. I think so far it's good, but any typos and stuff like that'd be nice. All right.
Yeah, I liked it. I'm still awake though. If anybody wants to hang out and shoot the breeze,
Talk to your American counterparts.
right?